For a moment of silence to honor all those serving across the world and to keep in mind next week, September 11th. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I can't believe I did that. Oh, that's so much better. I can squish it. Good evening and welcome to the Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting of September 5th. To my right, we have Robert Enslone. To my left, Sandra Capriglione, Chris Gerver, Richard Cataggio, Secretary Gail Noble. All the way to the far side, we have Dennis Lindsay, our engineer, Stu Turner, our planner, Rick Golden, our attorney, Phil Greeley, our traffic consultant, and I'm Maria Hunter, your chairperson. Board members, some of you received minutes, some of you didn't, from April 15th. Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that's 5 yes. Okay. Boom. Done. First item on the agenda is Shops at Woodbury. Review and discuss revised site plan submitted for a mixed-use development to include retail stores, restaurants, and a hotel. Said property is located at the intersection of Route 32 and Low-C Lane and is known on the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 225, Block 1, Lots 34.1 and 34.2.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dominic Credisco from Drake Loeb on behalf of the applicant, the Shops at Woodbury. And I'm sure everyone recalls that this is the site that was formally approved for the Cabela's retail establishment and is currently been cleared by Cabela's, and we are proposing to develop it now with a combination of retail and hotel uses. And so we have appeared before the board previously with this plan. It was identified that certain variances were needed, especially in connection with the hotel use. And we have appeared before the zoning board, but we wanted to come back before this board because we understand that the zoning board cannot act until this board completes its environmental review. And so to advance that, we've made this current submission, and I'll turn it over to Steve Esposito to walk you through the present submission that's in front of you.
Good evening. And just one other thing, in addition to the revised site plans, conceptual site plans that we submitted, we also submitted a preliminary traffic analysis. It's always been, one of the key issues here in this particular site, in this part of town or village, is traffic. So we wanted to get out in front of that issue with that report. We did receive comments from Mazer, your traffic consultant, which most of them are pretty straightforward, and we will be addressing those in the future. A couple of things that we changed the plan. The initial plan had a combined footprint of about 57,000 square feet. 57,000 square feet. The current plan has about 52,600 square feet in building footprint. The reduction in that square footage also allowed us to reduce the number of required parking from 572 spaces to 564 spaces. But one of the major changes in the plan is we were able to push, there was parking, this structure right here is the proposed hotel. We had also met with the emergency services and had some conversations regarding access around the hotel and throughout the site itself. So we took those comments along with the identified need that we needed to distribute the parking a little bit more equitable amongst the different structures. So what we did do is took the hotel, moved it back to the north, eliminating, there was some significant parking behind the hotel, which really would have been wasted. So we moved that back into the center of the site and have just marginal parking behind the hotel. Another thing, we relocated one of the proposed restaurants, which is this building here, which was down in here. We moved that back to create two sort of central parking areas for the proposed uses. Again, a little more equitable distribution of the parking in this plan. Again, it's as Dominic said, it's a mixed use. It's a commercial center consisting of a hotel, restaurant pads, and about 17,000 square feet of inline retail. And what we'd like to do is, discuss with the board the ability to move forward and advance the seeker analysis. If there's anything in specifically that the board would like to see in further detail, we can go ahead and prepare that report or documents. One other thing that we'd like to introduce to you as well, surely you know that there's a moratorium right now on the approvals of hotels or any projects associated with a hotel. What we would like to do is advance SECRA, conclude the environmental review so we can go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals and hopefully receive the relief from the zoning that we've requested from them. But also, we would like to phase the project. And phase one would be really the front part of the site. And obviously, phase two would be the rear part or north portion of the site where the hotel is located. This would allow us to proceed with a final conditional site plan approval, hopefully for that portion of the project, and commence work as the village board, continues to review the zoning changes for the hotel use within the village.
Thank you. Before I go to Dennis, now that I have my reading glasses, just want to note for the record, on April 5th, we sent the ZBA referral. On April 17th, we sent out the intent for lead agency notice. We received back from the Orange County DPW on the 23rd of April, Woodbury Police on the 26th of April, New York State DEC on the 30th of April, New York State DOT on the 10th of May, Village of Harriman Board of Trustees on the 11th of May, and Orange County Department of Planning on the 17th of May. Just for reference, on May 11th and May 15th, the Times Herald Record had two separate articles about the park and ride up at this location. On May 21st, Orange County Department of Planning submitted a letter of the with GML submission. On May 22nd, we had our first ESO meeting. On June 5th, we had a second follow-up ESO meeting. August 23rd, notices were sent out again to Orange County Department of Planning and DPW. On the 30th, we received the Mesa report, and on August 22nd, we received the application from the applicant request, the full EAF, I should say revised EAF, the Kimley Horn report dated 8/22, and the revised map. I just want to note that for the record, and I'll make sure, hopefully all this information is posted on the website. Now, Dennis, you can, I know I didn't ask for certain reports on this because we've gone back and forth. I just want to get more input from the board as to where we're going. And I know Stu sent me an email that he had a meeting with Scott Geiger. I'm not sure if Phil was there as well at that meeting, so I just want to hear from the consultants on this application.
All right, as you said, we didn't do a report on this, but, I looked at the plan. They have provided the grading on the plan. The grading looks pretty good. There are some questions, though, that haven't been answered, and I don't know, it may involve somewhat in your seeker action. The shape of the parking lot for the commuter lot is very close to what they showed on the earlier plan. There's just a slight modification. But the aisle that came in from 17 has been eliminated, and I just wanted to find out from the applicant whether, I know they've had some meetings with DOT, and whether that has been resolved as to whether the only access to this park and ride area will be through the main entrance at the light. I don't know if you have anything on it, Steve.
Can add to that. Yes, they've eliminated, if you recall, the first version of the park and ride was actually generated by us in conjunction with the DOT. When they finally went into contract with Yonkers, they went into final design as part of their scope of work. They've eliminated that leg.
The
that
north
went-
entrance?
Yeah, so it's really going to be, it's going to be the signalized intersection off of Averill Avenue. That's it, in and out. And that's via a permanent easement over the shops, you know, to benefit the park and ride.
Okay. The other thing is on the shape of the, and the functionality of the park and ride. For most part, they have aisles that are fully within the area they've shown for the park and ride. But there's one path, if you will, that goes down the middle of the aisle. And there's also one lot that, or one stall that is inside of the center, but it's adjacent to stalls that are inside of the park and ride. I don't know how they're going to manage that. But I think it'd be
Which one?
important.
Which,
for-
where?
Could you show us on the map?
Sure.
Oh, I see where it is. Okay. It's over by number 5, the restaurant?
There's a single space right here.
Okay, I see
Right
it.
up here. By the fast food restaurant here. There's a
Can you,
single
can you
space.
turn it around for us to get oriented, because we're looking at it differently. There we go. Thank you. It's
the
where number
single
5
space
is.
right here. Single
See
space
where it
right
says,
here.
see where it says 600? Right here, yeah. There's a space right there.
And
Which,
then
the park and
there's-
ride.
There's a path through the aisleway that goes down here where there's not sufficient room to back out. Now, there's gonna have to be cross easements. So the point is this. There are gonna be cross easements here so that they can do this and have it function this way. So at some point, sometime in the process, that should come in, and Rick should be able to take a look at that and make sure that this is gonna function properly, okay? For snow plowing, for access, for policing. In terms of most of the lot, it is well segmented from the other, or it is segmented at least, and there can be some demarcation. I don't know how they're gonna do it in colored stalls with signs or whatever they're gonna do. That one space on the end there, I think makes no sense, because it's not gonna happen that way. I think they'll have to fix that. So anyway, that's just something that I noted in this. I think that this should go back, a number of the changes they've made are in response to the ESO comments. I think that they've tried to be responsive to what the ESO wants, but I think that this is a large center. They are at the preliminary stages now. They're going to develop plans from this and put a lot of effort and money into doing the other things that need to be done after they get their ZBA action, assuming it's positive. They would be back and they'd have to do stormwater, and that's going to involve significant effort, lighting, all the water and sewer distribution in here. So there's going to be a level of effort where they should understand and be somewhat comfortable that the lot layout as they have it and the dry aisle widths are going to remain. And I think that that was something that was changed in response to the ESOs.
All right.
And like I said, there's a number of things that will have to be done eventually for this plan. This is a layout plan. That's basically what it is.
Okay. With you just talking about all that with the commuter parking lot, one thing I'm missing is handicap parking spaces for the commuter parking lot. The other thing is, I thought this was supposed to be a 200-car parking lot for the commuters. I'm only counting about 173. I could be off by a couple. Are you anticipating overflow into the center? There's supposed to be 200 parking spots for the commuter park, or they reduced it.
We have no control over that. We didn't design it. We conceptually designed it for them initially.
Okay.
We offered, if you recall, our plan actually went a little further into the 17 right-of-way to the east.
Right.
They've eliminated that, I believe, because of cost. And maybe that's where they lost some of the spaces.
When
But
you s-
we were not involved in the final design.
When you say they, Yonkers?
It's really, it's Yonkers and their design team.
So Yonkers is telling New York State DOT
Ultimately,
what
the
to do?
ultimately under the
All right, so.
guise of the DOT.
So Rick, I'm going to bounce over to you. They have the authority to talk about what to do in our town, or excuse me, our village? The Yonkers? They
Well,
can tell,
Yonkers does via the state, because the state has determined that this should not be a traditional form of a design and then going out to build, but it should be a simultaneous design-build contract. And so by that, the state has deferred certain of the design issues to its contractor. This happens from time to time. It's not a usual thing, but it does happen from time to time, less usual on these large projects like this. But they have the right to do that, yes. This is really, it's really the state determining the design, but they have determined, rather than doing it in-house or by way of a prior contract with a design engineer to come up with a specific design, they've determined to do it in a design-build context.
okay. Phil, just bear with me for a second. Phil, please take note on May 11th, 2018, time held record. When the Exit 131 project is completed next year, a permanent 204-car park and ride will open next to the temporary one. I need, what they're promising, what they're giving us are two different things. I need that clarified through their traffic consultants. I'm sorry to be a pain about that, but.
No, not
it's-
at all. And, I just wanted to add to the discussion that, while we don't have any control over them,
Right.
and they haven't applied, and nor would they apply to the Village of Woodbury for
Right.
site plan approval for the park and ride, your comments are still valid.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage you to do, either through yourself or through your consultants, is to pass those on to DOT, because it may, raise issues that DOT hasn't considered in terms of the functionality of the stalls or other issues for them to consider. The final park and ride has not yet been constructed, and actually is one of the very last pieces, as I understand it, in terms of the sequencing for the 131 project, because right now, what's open is the temporary park and ride, which
Right.
is not in an area where the final park and ride is going to go.
Right. Yeah, that's where the old hotel area was. All right, so Phil, I guess on my end, and I'm sure we're gonna have weigh-in from everyone else, where are the handicap parking? Where is there's supposed to be electrical parking, and there's also, so they're short, in my estimation, 31, 32, what they're promising in the record. So that is one issue with their parking. And I am very disappointed that they eliminated that one entrance, because at our ESO meetings, we asked for the emergency entrance, as is across the street with Harriman, Woodbury Center. I don't see a secondary emergency entrance on here, and that is that's problematic for me, I'm sure, as for the board members as well, because that was specifically asked for by the sergeant who has attended that meeting, and I don't know what happened to that. And with this hotel and with the potential of the traffic at this whole intersection, not just the driveway, but I want that secondary access. I don't know how the board feels about it, but that's my opinion.
I
Robert?
think so, definitely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. I won't continue on this.
Can I just have,
Go
I
ahead,
I have
ask.
one question about the park and ride, because in the county's answer to the GML back in May, they said, we recommend coordination among the Village of Woodbury, New York State DOT, and the Orange County Transportation Council in this regard before approval is contemplated. Was Orange County Transportation Council brought into this at all?
Not to our understanding. I mean, we weren't part of that process, so I can't
Okay.
answer you yes or no whether or not the Orange County Transportation Council was brought in.
Okay.
I know that, because of the way that this project was advanced, I understand that, it was basically made a priority. And so typically, the Orange County Transportation Council gets involved in the TIP process in identifying projects that should be advanced or are more priority than others. I think the declaration that this is a priority project came from the governor, and as a result, I'm not sure that would have triggered as a requirement the Orange County Transportation Council's involvement. I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak around it. It's
No,
just-
no, I'm just, I mean,
We know it's not, we know it's not the applicant. We know where it's coming, where it's happening, but we need this answered. And Phil, I'm not sure if you have this, it's from May 21st, the Orange County Department of Planning. If, I'm sure Maria can get you that.
Yes.
Copy of that report. There's a few things in there about the traffic.
What I can tell you, and I think, you know, on a very positive note, is that we have been meeting on a regular basis with the Department of Transportation and Yonkers Contracting, because we wanted to ensure that the traffic improvements that were shown as part of the approved Cabela's plan were also incorporated into the improvements that the DOT and Yonkers are now building out there. And there were some areas where they needed to tweak their design in order to match the the village's previously approved plans. And so as a result, the DOT and Yonkers have made those changes. We did receive comment from Mazer saying that they wanted to see an overlay of those plans, and we will certainly provide them as part of our next submission. But the important point here and the key takeaway is that, you know, in 2019, the road work along Route 32 is going to be completed. And the last thing that anybody wanted, and least of all us, was to have to go in and disturb the work that had just been
Right.
completed by either relocating, you know, drainage or poles for light fixtures or any of that. So, so I think we have a good resolution on that. We will demonstrate that to you in our next submission.
Okay. Anything else, Dennis?
Yes, and I don't mean to dwell simply on the commuter lot, but it
okay.
it affects the site plan. Is Yonkers' contract now include the construction of this?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're not prepared to proceed with the development, how are they going to obtain access to this lot? Are they going to build a roadway in and around, or how are they going to do that?
Well, right now, there is permanent easements for access to and from the park and ride. And they are under contract to essentially build the access drive into the park and ride, the parking lot itself, and any, you know, appurtenances that go along with it.
And there's also temporary construction easements as well, which allows them to do the activity that they're doing now.
There's grading activities around the land owned in fee that's going to be ultimately the parking lot. And then we also have a small temporary access easement as well.
Okay, with that being said, Rick, with this temporary, I'm not gonna worry about that, but the permanent easement, don't you need to see that so that we can make this part of this applications, because they're going through this applicant's property?
yes, we should see every easement that may have an impact upon this final plan. You don't need to see some temporary construction easement with respect to the project. But as to something that may impact the final plan that they are asking you to approve, any easement that affects that in any way, they should be providing so that I can review it and advise the board.
Okay, so
We'll provide that, and we can provide that directly to your council if you'd like.
that'd be perfect. Going directly through Rick, that'd be perfect. Dennis, anything else?
Well, there's lots more to come, but that's all I have for now.
Oh, I know. Board members, I know we have lots of comments about, I'm just going to hear from, Stu was at a meeting with Scott Geiger, who's with the DOT. If you can briefly tell us what that meeting was?
Yeah, I'll explain the context of that, and Phil was not there. This was a meeting, the Transportation Committee of the Citizens Foundation. Scott was invited to bring everyone up to speed or up to date on the status of the 131 improvements. He was very generous with his time and detail. I guess he is technically coordinating the implementation of this plan, although there seem to be a number of people involved. The reason, we had actually, and we don't want to keep beating up the same horse, in our earlier memo, we talked about the relationship between the commuter lot and the rest of the project, and it is pretty critical for a lot of reasons. I think Phil has probably asked for the most important piece of information for the board, and that is having a clear understanding of what DOT and the applicant's discussions have concluded. I presume, as Steve says, that these are probably reflected at least up to this point, but there's a lot of issues in terms of the relationship of this parking as we go forward. Some of it, we were originally concerned as to whether it's going to be used and/or abused by people in the new shopping hotel area, or if the commuters were going to be pouring over into this area and how that was going to be regulated. Out of this discussion, however, without belaboring it, it would be helpful for the board to know what those conversations have produced up to this point in terms of the relationship between the state's planning, and the reason they were at this meeting was that the Citizens Foundation is more concerned about this as a regional project and where it stands and how it's going and how it's progressing. But clearly, from the village's perspective, coordinating development and planning in the village is pretty critical. I would suggest, and again, I don't know how the board feels about this, but you might even, as we proceed, to invite DOT or Scott Geiger to come to one of the meetings and talk about the interrelationship between the two as they see it. And they're progressing. I mean, you can see what's going on out there. They're actually making some pretty good progress. So we've been hearing a lot about tonight. We're hearing a lot about where things stand. I just think it would be helpful as you proceed. Phil's going to have more to say about this whole matter of the traffic and transportation. I just thought it would be useful for you to know that that Woodbury is a sort of a critical piece in this whole regional improvement, and this site is being impacted significantly, as are a couple of others. And I think Steve said in his presentation or in his submittal that because I think he would like to advance the seeker process, that in addition to the traffic, I think you were going to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I thought you said you were going to present to the board just a comparison of what they agreed to with Cabela and how this compares to the impacts, which are probably less in most respects, less impact. But I don't think that was part of your current submission. There are a lot of other details that once the site is firmed up in terms of access, circulation, we have a lot of things that we might want to say more about in terms of the whole landscaping and signing and so on. So that's really what that meeting was. That was really in a regional context, but I think that the board might benefit from having some of that conversation with the state directly.
Thank you. Rick?
Just a couple of points. One on seeker is that you may assume seeker lead agency status tonight. Your next step obviously would be to make a determination of significance. So you could either do that immediately, which is the traditional way to do it, or you could decide what areas other than traffic that you've already identified that you want to study and proceed down the path of an expanded EAF Part 3 to try to see if whatever issues that you identify that may be potentially significant adverse environmental impacts, how the applicant ought to be addressing those with reports or other methods of addressing those issues. So I think you should have some discussion as to how you want to proceed after you assume lead agency. And this application will also have to be referred to the county under GML 239.
239, you said?
239.
Okay. I'm just going to make sure that's what we're getting. She did another one, August 23rd. It's for 239-LM and N. So that's,
Okay.
yeah, she did, there was a second submission.
Okay,
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Thank
no,
you.
That's somewhere in the packets. I had to pull it apart, so, all right. That was done 8/23. All right. Anything else?
No.
Hi, Phil.
Good evening. We had prepared a August 30th memorandum based on the information that Mr. Esposito's office had submitted, which included the EAF, a traffic memorandum from Kimley Horn, and a copy of a site plan with grading. In terms of that, our review of those materials, we had about a dozen comments. The first three were just really related to the EAF and some cleanup items and reference to the other materials that were, attached to his submission. Two things, very important in terms of, we've started discussing already, was to have a composite plan. The plan that was submitted to us didn't really show the relationship with the state highway and the improvements that were being done. I see Mr. Esposito does have a plan tonight that shows some more details, but that's very important for us to see the relationship with the Woodbury Center and with what the Department of Transportation is currently doing today. Secondly, was a request to at least have a synopsis of the various items that have been discussed in these many meetings with the DOT relating to the park and ride, relating to, the improvements on the state highway, the modifications for the project, and other, easement-related items, et cetera. So to give us and the board a synopsis of that, and then we do plan to reach out to DOT, and I think the chairwoman's comments, we'll have those addressed, but we'll see if we can get DOT to actually come, to a meeting here, or at least provide a synopsis of where they've ended up with the park and ride and some of the other issues related to emergency services, et cetera. So I think, the park and ride DOT work and the project being proposed here are different, but they're totally interrelated, so we'll get that confirmation. So I think those are kind of the two major overriding items that we asked for. In reviewing the traffic materials provided, we are in agreement with their consultants' comparison of the total trip generation of, what Cabela's was versus what is now proposed. We've asked for some additional information relative. One of the issues relative to Cabela's was, the distribution of the traffic. Where would it go to and from? And in the Cabela's study, there were 9 other intersections that were evaluated. I don't think we need to see a re-evaluation of those, but just a comparison of how the trips from this project would be added to those intersections. So we know, and as the board can see, what was being added under the previous project on the Cabela's and what would be added to those intersections under this project. I think the focus of the traffic memorandum that Kimley Horn had done was really at the access connection to the state highway, which is fine, but we just want to see that relationship, and it'll make it easier for the board to see, that there are no major differences. I don't think it's a heavy lift. And then, eventually we'll have to get involved with the signing and striping plans. As part of their discussions with the DOT, we want to just have whatever information was discussed relative to easements and the access to the existing gas station, how that was, addressed. And then, a few other just cleanup items, mostly related to the relationship to the DOT project and the coordination of the improvements. And for example, in the traffic narrative, they point out that under the Cabela's plan, there was going to be a right turn lane southbound on Route 17 turning into Losi Lane, and now that is going to be a through/right turn lane, which, is fine, but we just need to see the relationship so that we can, verify the analysis and how that's being handled. So again, our memo from August 30th outlines each of these items. I think, there'll be more details once we get into the nitty-gritty of it, but I think we need those pieces of information in order to advance, through the seeker process, so. And we will, be back to you with input from DOT and to see if we can get them to attend the meeting. So if there's any questions, I think, that, our memo is pretty straightforward in terms of what we're asking the applicant to provide to the board.
Okay, who would ask Scott or representative from the DOT to attend one of our meetings?
I would reach out to him first, and then, sometimes if they're willing to, attend, they would ask for a letter from the chair or, so I'll start the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's not only appropriate, I think it's a very good suggestion by Mr. Turner and would help the board. And just so everyone's clear, the presentation that Scott gave is actually, I think, part of a roadshow that he's doing in front of a number of different organizations. He has a prepared presentation. I've seen it, and it's about, the phasing of all the work that's being done for 131 as well as future study along the 17 corridor. I thought it was very informative and helpful, and I think that if the board makes the request through your consultant, that he basically come and provide that, and then, you can also get into issues regarding the future park and ride, and it might be an opportunity rather than, if you couch it as, please come talk about this particular project, I think that he would probably have to turn.
Better
that down.
likelihood to get him to.
Yep. But
For
with
him
that,
to come.
I will say also that I do know that he actually is giving that presentation again on September 27th at the Orange County Municipal Planning Federation for their annual dinner at, I think it's either Delancey's. Yep, it's at Delancey's. So, it's
I'll be there.
always a lively event. But, in any event,
Someone save me a seat, I'll be there.
Yeah, so I'll be there as well, and, but I do expect him to give the same presentation, but it's
okay.
chock full of information, I think, and is worthwhile, even beyond the scope of this particular project.
Okay. Anything else, Phil?
I think that's it
Traffic-wise?
unless the board has any specific
Yeah.
questions at this point.
I have a question,
I'll
Phil.
start with Robert, go
Yes.
ahead.
Where was the original park and ride when we were talking about Cabela's? Was it more towards the front towards 32?
It was generally in the same location. The shape may have changed and the number of spaces, but the location of it was the same. There were variations in terms of the access to the state highway, but the location was as shown on this drawing.
Yeah, my impression was supposed to be where the two bus stops are shown.
Yeah.
My impression was supposed to be a little lower and a little over that way,
Right.
more towards where the exit ramp is right now, even though there's a hill there. That was my impression, because Cabela's was basically here and the park and ride was that way.
Pushback.
Pushed back and down the hill, right?
But
Steve?
it was on that side of the site.
It was always on the east side,
Yes.
Yeah.
but when we developed Cabela's, the only thing that, the only permanent elements that grew out of that process was the easements through Losi Lane, and then also the permanent easement that they're using right now, because we provided them access through the Cabela's site to their right-of-way on 17, because that's where the majority of that improvement was going to be.
Now, who's going to be maintaining the park and ride, Orange County or New York State DOT? Who actually owns that property that's been?
It's owned and
sold?
fee by the state of New York,
Okay.
and the DOT will be responsible to maintain the facility. In the past, there was some sort of a relationship between the county and the state, but the state indicated during one of our meetings that they would be maintaining it.
All
Do
right.
the lines that you've shown there reflect ownership now in fee? They already have that?
Yeah, the red lines,
That's our dark, that's
those
our-
are the fee lines, that's the land that's owned by the state, and then the permanent easements. Come up, there was an existing one already, but it comes up Losi Lane, makes a right-hand turn towards 17, and then also loops around to here, so there's a loop.
On the black and white map that we have here, it's the black lines dotted, that's the property outline, correct? This is the property outline.
Correct, yeah, the darker line
Yeah.
is the property line. And then the easement starts here. Yeah, the easements start from here, come around to the property line, and then there's another permanent easement that comes up and around to that property line. And that's to benefit the state.
Rick and Dennis, the park and ride's gonna be able to access on either side of building number 5. Can you show them on that map there, Steve?
Yes,
Or
here and here.
when I say access on both sides,
They come
where
in
it
here, they
says,
come in here.
where the line goes across, where it says
Actually, they come in here,
604
too.
with the, they're accessing in 2 locations. They're going through 2 easements through this property.
Right. And that's why, one of the things I think you need to see, unless the applicant can, well, it appears that this is owned now, and they're going to build it as part of this contract. So this could be in long before this development is built out.
Yeah.
So I think we probably ought to see those easements and see what's going to be built in the interim, so that you can understand how stormwater management's going to work, how this happens if this doesn't proceed for a while.
Actually, the stormwater that you see on the plan right now, that's the permanent design from the DOT.
This is the permanent design?
For their stormwater.
Oh, for stormwater.
Do they own that stormwater conveyance, or do you own that?
They own.
They own all of that?
Even within the easement.
Within the
All right.
easement.
Also, from what I just
Well, that's
heard,
important because of the
Yeah.
MS4 obligations, but if it's theirs, they're an MS4 as well. The state has a responsibility.
Okay.
So they'll be signing off, and that we won't, because there's no stormwater attenuation or water quality improvement practices here. I don't know how they're doing it. Maybe they're doing it as a macro sense for the whole thing, but.
all right. With that being said, we in Woodbury, we protect ourselves. How are we going to make sure that the property that's owned by New York State and the DOT responsible for maintaining the plowing and going through these easements and the water? I have severe concerns about this. And right now, we have a mountain that's grown down there that's, am I? It's a It gets bigger and bigger, and that's impacting the wetlands behind it. And it's not your fault, Steve or Dominic, this is what the state has done. And what they've done is they've put concrete, macadam, and they've buried it. We don't do that in Woodbury. I have a severe problem with that, and it's not you, Steve. Like I said, it's not you.
We share that concern, just to let you know,
Yeah.
and that's one of our topics of conversation the next time we meet.
And I guess I'm looking at my attorney. Where does that put us for approving this project that New York State is coming in and saying, hey, we can do whatever we want? And that's what I'm feeling, I'm getting a feeling for this. I mean, what can we do as a planning board? Do we have to go to our village board of trustees?
Well, there's nothing, I mean, the plan that's coming before you is the plan of the private area,
Right,
right? The DOT is not coming in for your approval.
right.
And what the DOT is doing is something that this planning board has no jurisdiction over the DOT. You can start an action against the DOT, legal action if you want, to try to get an injunction against the state from doing something that you believe is harmful. We'd have to research that to get the proper standing in order to go ahead and do that, but I imagine I can do that. But that would be something that the Board of Trustees would have to determine that they want to do. But it's outside of the jurisdiction of the planning board.
Right. All right, we'll talk about that later.
The road in is actually.
Use the microphone, please.
The road in is actually owned by the applicant, but there's an easement over it for drainage or whatever else the state
Right.
is using it. Yeah,
Correct.
okay, and access, yeah.
So,
So that when you raised the question about plowing and so on, I mean, that's down the road, but it's their road, right? Right.
well, these are things that need to be put
The
into
applicant's
place
road.
between, would be easements for access. Definitely some kind of plowing agreement that needs to be looked over by our attorney. And where are you gonna put all this snow? You're gonna dump it off the side into the wetlands? And I understand that the DOT owns it, I get it, but you're going through a property that this applicant owns, and that's a major issue, I think, for most of us. I know I'm speaking here for But I'll let Sandy go. Go ahead, go ahead. No, but go ahead.
I'll pick it up from there.
You can take it from there.
Okay, I have a question.
Were you finished?
It bothered me in the beginning,
come
it's still
back.
bothering me. The
Okay.
building number 1, I guess it is, that's not really marked, the fast food building,
That should be building 1, the number is missing,
Yeah.
I presume.
right? That's building 1?
Correct.
Okay, can you show me how the traffic is gonna go in and flow around that building?
I guess, can you take the microphone with you? I'm sorry.
And it goes annoying this way.
You're going to come up the main entrance. You're going to make a left-hand turn. It's directional, so you would turn in right through here. And it's going to be a one-way loop in and out. And then on the interior, we've provided an area for a drive-through that follows the same direction to exit.
Can you come show me on my map?
Oh, so to go to the drive-through, you have to
going-
loop around twice.
You're going to come in up the main loop.
Right?
Right, you're going to make a left-hand turn into here. Right? So this is all one direction. So you're going to either come through here, and then back out again.
So the drive-through portion has to go loop around twice.
Or your drive-through, you're going to wrap around twice.
And
So-
the drive-through will come,
Back.
two will merge
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So this is this direction.
To emerge, but they're going to continue around the circle.
Right, so
They
you'll
can't-
just-
They can't go to the right, they have to
Right.
keep
So
going
if
to the
you-
left.
So you're going to be, when you come in, you're going to merge to the left.
So this parking is for the fast food?
Correct.
And to go in, there's going to be crossing traffic.
Well, we anticipate the majority of the parking will all be right in this lane, right here, because it's going to be the main entrance there.
But that's a very good point, Sandy, because when we approved years ago a fast food restaurant off of Larkin Drive, we were very adamant about there would be no pedestrian crossing over the drive-through lane. And that is a very good point, because that was, as at the time was called, the big gorilla in the room that we had to talk about.
And,
Everyone knows who I'm talking about, too.
and the other thing is the dumpster is going to be right in the flow of traffic as well. That is the dumpster, right?
Yes, it is a dumpster where traffic
So that's
has-
going to be in the flow of traffic.
And they would, how would they back up to that?
They're going to head in, the reason why that dumpster's there is you're going to pull in the loop, and you're going to head right into the enclosure. They'll take the dumpster, dump it in, put it back down, back up, and out they go.
Is that going to be 2 lanes? Where
For-
the 596 numbers are and the hashtags, are you going to have a drive-through lane? You have, where you go through the drive-through lane?
Yes.
This has been done at Wendy's. You have the drive-through and you have a pass-through lane. Are you
This is
gonna
going to
have-
be this is going to be a single drive-through lane. It's going to be clearly marked.
No, it's gonna be 2. I'm sorry, we've done it before. It has to be 2. Because if the garbage dumpster is there, traffic is gonna go all backed up until the dumpster is emptied. You have hashtags here. This has gotta be 2 lanes. If you can't pick up, I understand that, but you're blocking a lane.
This is actually going to be striped.
Understand asphalt, but let's say this fast food restaurant, they ask you to pull forward because your items aren't ready yet. Where are you pulling forward? And you have is there gonna be a stop sign here? How are you gonna direct traffic within?
Yeah, there's a stop bar right there.
What's the, there's 2, there's a double, you can go to, you can,
Double lane, you can split, double order.
double order
Okay.
place,
Okay, so again, these two then are going to merge
to merge into
together.
one lane.
Okay.
And that's just it. Now, what if someone comes through here and makes a mistake? Oh, I don't wanna go to the drive-through, but they're committed. How are they gonna get past all the people who are lined up waiting to get their food?
Patience. It's Big Ben, Parliament.
Okay, I'm just throwing that out there, because we've dealt with a
I
fast food.
don't like the design of that at all.
All right, very, point well taken. What else, Sandy, on that one?
Okay, that's okay, no, I'm not, you're not in my way. On the latest EAF, I'm confused why, okay, so we went from 9.1 acres to 9.6, okay? And we went from, where I'm concerned and confused
What
possibly.
page number?
Page 3 of 13.
Okay.
So we went to 9.6 from 9.1. At 9.1, the total acreage to be physically disturbed was 6.8 acres, and now we're at 8.1 acres of disturbance? Why are, when these buildings, for the most part, have been reduced in size,
Not really.
why are we, well, according,
The red numbers are from last time. This is the new numbers.
right,
You have what's happening, and that's what I wanted to ask, on the hotel. You went from 5776 to down to 52. That's a difference of 45, give or take. Are you eliminating a floor on the hotel, or you're making it smaller?
Footprint.
The footprint is smaller. So they're reducing at least 4,500 from the difference is basically the hotel. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong numbers, excuse me.
50, yeah,
I was looking at the overall total.
right.
So.
But that's what I'm saying, if you've reduced these numbers, why is the disturbance greater by over an acre?
I don't know.
We went from 6.8 to now we're at 8.1.
Yep.
I don't understand that.
Did you gain a half an acre?
Well, they gained a half an acre in the overall size, because they went from
Overall
9.1 to 9.6. But shouldn't that be relative then, 6.8, but now we're at 8.1?
My guess is that 6 was probably an 8 to begin with, and it was probably a typo, because that, you know,
It was all throughout all the other information.
but it's been corrected, and your current EAF is now reflects the area of disturbance.
But that's an even greater one from
All
what
right.
we had before.
I know.
I mean, I'm of the same belief that the lot is being way overdeveloped, and this compounds that feeling. That's all I have right now.
Okay. Who's next? Chris?
Question I have on the northwest part. When you look at the federal wetland mapper, it looks like the project encroaches what's mapped in the federal wetland mapper as wetlands. It's on the January 30th drawings, but seems to have disappeared on the August 22nd drawings in the northwest quadrant of the project.
First of all, if just a little history, this site, when it was proposed for Cabela's, had gone through a full environmental impact statement. We had delineated the federal wetlands that were at the time, when the site was 13.9 acres, there were federal wetlands to the west, which probably graphically showed up as a ghost on one of the earlier applications. That land has since been conveyed to the New York State Department of Transportation. We no longer own those; they're off-site, and those were based on a field delineation. There was a jurisdictional determination issued at that point in time for Cabela's for that boundary.
But your project still is going to potentially encroach on that area, even though you
No,
don't-
the DOT owns all the land between us, our westerly property line, and the wetlands. All that is state-owned land. That used to be where the south ramp of the original design was.
that circular rim.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess,
So I might put it this way. The mountain is between our site and the wetlands.
The mountain is disturbing the wetlands. Right?
go for it.
The mountain is disturbing the wetlands. Oh, my
And
God.
and overall, Maria, the whole concern I have here is attending the last school board meeting, there's still fluidity in this project because they're changing some of where the exit ramps are at Central Valley.
Yep.
And for us to go ahead before the asphalt and macadam is dry with the parking ride, I think is a little premature because we know it's a build and design project and it can change pretty much at a whim if they wanted to change it. And I think granting any sort of site approval before we know definitively, and I think the only way we're gonna know definitively where the park and ride ends up is when the macadam's on the ground and it's all striped and buses are pulling in and out of it, and then I think we should be able to move forward something like this to get a better understanding where everything lays out. And then with the other board concerns, that's a busy area in the morning, during the morning peak hours, and between 4 and 7, 4 and 8, when all the buses are coming home from the city, which is also peak time for people to go get dinner and fast food places, and you only have the couple of lanes in and out. I think it's, traffic over there at the holidays, major holidays, is already a disaster. You compound people trying to get in and out of the parking ride, you compound people trying to get dinner on a holiday. I think it's just too big, too much for the area to handle right now, especially with the DOT project still up in the air.
When, I agree with you. When Cabela's was before us, Cabela's was considered a destination where someone would come and spend a couple of hours there.
It's an experience. If
An
you've never been to
exper- right.
Cabela's before, it's an experience
Right.
to go.
It's an experience. You stay there, you have lunch, you have breakfast, whatever you want to do, you go and visit all the, so the use intensity was much less with the traffic, because the traffic would stay for a couple hours. Here, with the two fast foods, I believe it's two fast food, am I not mistaken? There was at least two that
There's two.
which one?
There's an FF.
Oh, here's a drive-through here, the fast food is here. There's only two drive-throughs, right?
Yeah, and the restaurant.
Restaurants. So there's an increase of intensity of use in here where people are going to be coming and going quite frequently. So to me, when we get to the secret portion, that old report is a basis. It needs to change with the intent of use now. But I agree with you. Anything else?
That's okay.
Rich? I know you're still here, right? There you are.
Yeah, basically, I share the same concern about the one entrance, I mean, and the mixed use and the amount of traffic. When I try to go into Coles, make a left,
Right.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they almost block the lane, so you can't make the left. I can imagine if you have the same amount of traffic coming across the street, that intersection is gonna be disaster. I mean, I'm sure you experienced, you cannot make a left into Coles on the weekend with the traffic, even with the light. I mean, they just don't care about the red light, green light.
It's 7 days a
And-
week. It's
Huh?
7 days a week,
Yeah,
not just
well,
on the
I'm
weekend.
Yeah, so I'm concerned about the one entrance, the mixed use, the amount of
Okay.
traffic. And I know they gotta go before the ZBA for the hotel as a interpretation, but is there a plan B in case the hotel doesn't get approved?
Steve had touched on that at the very beginning, where we are seeking to phase the approvals and the construction, so that the hotel portion, the back portion of the property, would be a secondary phase that could possibly obtain approval if and when the village amends its zoning law in regards to hotels. But of course, that's an entirely legislative function of the village board, and whatever the village board decides in its wisdom, they decide to do. And if they decide that a hotel is not appropriate at this location, we would like to advance the remainder of the project. So it's not all being packaged together as one thing. If I could respond to a couple of your comments, I would never disagree with you as residents of Woodbury of what traffic conditions are and what you experience on a day-to-day basis. But what I would point out is that the DOT is currently undertaking a $150 million reconfiguration project of this entire corridor. And so what we're doing is we're working with them to make sure that our traffic from this site is coordinated with their improvements. And their improvements are being done solely to improve traffic conditions throughout the corridor. They're not doing it for any other reason. And we, have been evaluating our traffic impacts, and while I appreciate, the sense and perspectives that you may have regarding traffic demands for Cabela's versus these potential traffic impacts, but as a matter of accepted traffic study, our traffic generation numbers are almost half of what was projected to occur at Cabela's. So I think that there may be a perception regarding the intensity of use, but what we would like to demonstrate to you as you continue this review is that our actual traffic generation is going to be less, significantly less, and that it's going to work with the redesigned Route 32 corridor. And we'll come back and we'll demonstrate that, and we'll do it to to address all the board's concerns. So we're committed to being here and working with you in that regard.
Thank you.
One other point.
Oh, go ahead.
is that, if you recall, Maria, with Cabela's, there was significant off-site traffic impacts that were imposed by the DOT and this board as a result of that project. All of those mitigation measures that were identified and required are being installed or implemented as part of the 131 ramp. So that, those measures were installed to improve the traffic flow through the corridor, as well as addressing Cabela's trip generation and any other and all developments along the corridor, because when we studied Cabela's, we studied those as well.
Okay. Any other comments from the board members before I go at it? No. Okay. We discussed about the no handicap, the parking up at the Park and Ride. Phil, you're going to take care of that for me. The hotel is a smaller footprint because it's a decrease. About 3,000 square feet. How many floors are you proposing for the hotel? 3 or
Right,
4? How many floors? 4? All right, couldn't remember. Been a while. What's your fast food restaurant? As I stated before, with the concern about the drive-by lane. And I even think we did that at Panera Bread, if I'm not mistaken. When you go into the window, you pull up to the window, and there was a drive-by in case someone made a mistake and got in the wrong line. Now, this other drive-through, that's building where it says number 7 fast food. I know it doesn't show signs and everything. It's only 1 lane in. Goes all the way to the side. It's right at the end. There's going to be, if there's a delay, I know there's going to be stop signs and everything. But people can park on the other, the parking that's behind there, where it has number 37, behind number 7 and 8 building. What are those proposed parking for?
just overflow parking,
Okay.
likely never used, but, the code requires us to provide a certain number of spaces. But we see that as primarily overflow parking, possibly during the holiday season, but other than that, likely never used.
Okay, that's overflow parking. So those 37 potential overflow parking are going to have to walk across a drive-through lane and walk across, I don't see the sidewalks on here because this is just a preliminary plan and everything. So a garbage truck is going to come around the divider from the drive-through, go to the garbage dumpster in a 1 lane of traffic. I presume, no, it's 2 ways, right?
Yes.
And he's gonna have to cross over the left lane to a pickup of garbage. Because if he's going this way to pick up the garbage, you have traffic coming the other way, so he's gonna have to cross and block a lane of traffic for a short period of time. And that's the same way for retail space number 2. Garbage dumpsters are gonna go across the opposite lane of traffic to pick up the garbage. I find that problematic. Now, restaurant number 6, building number 6, garbage pickup. They're gonna have to go around through the parking lot where the hotel is to go front load out the garbage. Am I crazy? You're gonna go through a parking lot to pick up the garbage? I know I asked you to put garbage disposals in here. I'm just looking at all this. There's a lot of crossovers. Do we have those in Woodbury, Dennis? Have we ever approved some kind of garbage pickup, like where you go from heading one direction, cross over into the opposite direction to pick up your garbage? I'm having a
I can't tell you
problem.
we haven't. I mean, you've had a lot of different designs. Every lot is unique. You just got to make sure this one is safe
Right.
and they can manage the garbage removal
I don't-
safely.
Yeah, and I don't see the garbage removal for the hotel. I presume it's in the upper corner where it says 607, with a little butt out there?
Correct.
All right, so that's garbage there. That's the same thing. Deliveries, I'm presuming, for the hotel are going to be where the hashtags are, in the back of the hotel, for whatever deliveries they may need. Restaurant 6, you have a small area. I presume that's for the hashtag area, that's for deliveries. Your other businesses, I don't see where you're delivering your trucks in there. Where are you getting your deliveries to these buildings? I don't see a place for trucks, and we can't, Woodbury Common, we have a certain time delivery for certain areas. That's a huge, massive development of 250 stores. This one, we're looking at 9 buildings. With all this traffic going with the garbage dumpsters, deliveries, 2 drive-throughs, which the drive-through lanes are driving me nuts. I know, I'm sorry, I know you reduced the building square, you reduced it from 57,000 down to 52,000. It just seems too much for this space, and I've said this time and time and again. The retaining wall in the front, it was on the old map, where the old park and ride is. I don't know what the height is over there, where there's number 15 opposite retail building number 2. What happened to that retaining wall? What are we doing with that area? The second access, emergency access, and I'm gonna stand pat on that. I'm sure, as a board member, is gonna agree with me on that?
Yes.
Rich, you're agreeing?
Yeah.
That's gotta come into play. And I wanna make sure there are only 2 drive-through areas for fast food that we're looking at. There's only 2? There's not gonna be a third one popping up?
Maria, there could be. I mean, you know, who knows what the market is going to bring, but if that's the case, that application is going to have to come back before this board, or any change to this plan.
I need some guidance here, because, Phil, I need you to look at all these things that we're bringing up tonight within the traffic within. I find it.
I think at this point, one of the items we asked for was a detailed signing, striping plan, the layout. We haven't delved into that yet.
I know.
You know, we were just kind of reviewing more of the external and the traffic generation. I think once we get, you know, the composite plan, we can confirm the improvements, you know, that the applicants talked about. I think in terms of traffic generation, they've done the comparison for the peak hours. For this type of use, you'll have other hours where you may be reaching that peak. But again, as long as we know that they're designed, you know, in terms of the coordination with the DOT, we can address that issue. In terms of internal traffic flow, bypass lanes, I think Dennis and I will get into that in
Okay.
much depth. We will reach out to the DOT. I think we're still at a point where, you know, even separate from this project, that we can have some influence on DOT and what they're doing. If we don't get what we want, then Rick can get involved. But, you know, I think we'll reach out to DOT.
Okay.
We know the concerns. We'll try to get a sit-down with them and see what we can do to advance to get those items addressed, separate and apart, really, from this application.
Okay.
Even in terms of the access to and from the park and ride, we want to see what the DOT's input was, and because part of that was their responsibility to make sure they have the proper easements, and even the traffic flow getting in and out of there is going to be, you know, important in terms of what we look at Losi Lane. So.
One of the
Okay.
significant variances that they're seeking is the coverage variance.
Right, that was
They're
my-
at 70, almost 76%, and 65% is allowed. If, in fact, they're not successful, that'll mean 1 acre reduction in here of development area. If they're marginally successful or someplace in between, that'll also mean a lesser amount. So it's important in terms of designing the site, and designing these things that you're talking about in travel lanes and that sort of thing, depending upon how much the density is approved when they go for the variance. And that we'll only know after the ZBA acts.
Okay. Also, building number 5 at the restaurant, when you have the commuter traffic coming in, making the right-hand turn, you're gonna have a garbage truck going across the exiting lane to pick up garbage. That could impact commuter traffic going in as well. Another thing which the board, I don't know if you've taken notice, required parking is 564, and they're showing 506. Dennis, or Rick, what is our,
Variance.
excuse me,
Is it variance?
variance? Required parking is 564 spaces for what they have with the square footage of building. They're proposing 506, so we're short.
You have authorization within the code for a certain amount of reduction.
Right.
And I think it falls within that, but I have to double check again.
It does fall within that? It's,
20%?
it's 25%,
It's 25% is the,
Yeah.
up to.
up to, up
Yeah,
to.
but the applicant, I think, needs to make the argument to you, too, that how they support the request for the waiver.
Right, so we need that as well.
One of the things, and Stu actually alluded to it earlier, and sort of, this submission is a submission where, we've gotten comment early on from this board, ESO, our coordination with the DOT. It's a layout. We would like to further refine it. We understand, pedestrian needs, dumpster location. We hear you on the crossovers. But one of the things that we would like to do, and again, is get through seeker. We would prepare, and you're correct, Stu, when you had mentioned it, a comparison really of the Cabela's plan to this plan with regards to traffic, stormwater, impervious surface, the whole host of characters that we looked at during the environmental review process to evaluate the significance of this project. And then we would hopefully get through seeker and get to the ZBA to see where those cards fall.
Okay. As Rick stated earlier, at this point, before I forget, I'm going to offer a motion that we declare ourselves lead agency for this application. Do I have a second?
I'll
I
second.
second
Any further discussion about lead agency status? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, determination of significance. We talked primarily about the traffic. Are there any additional items in Part 3?
Maria?
Yes, sir.
If I
There you
might
go.
weigh in. I think a logical way to address this, since there's a lot of issues that are floating around here, is as Stu suggested and as Steve just commented on, it's probably the most organized way to handle this is to have them come back with that comparison so that will identify the various issues in the prior seeker with what they're doing now as to seeker. You can look at that, and I think you can use that as a jumping board in your review to determine whether or not you need some of those things still studied, whether you think that you need other things studied because the plan is obviously different than Cabela's. And we could move forward from there as to identifying those issues that you want studied. And then at that point in time is when you make your choice as to whether or not you want to go down the path of an expanded Part 3 to address all those issues, or whether or not you would make a positive declaration at that time.
And I think it would be fair, I agree with Rick, I mean, it would be fairer to the ZBA to have the benefit of your having thought through a lot of these potential impacts. You can share that with them if you do a negative declaration in the final analysis.
And we commit to providing that analysis to you. So my suggestion would be that we would come back in our next submission and include that in a clearly, digestible form that has all the various different areas of impact that were evaluated, and then, proposed mitigation measures for Cabela's compared to this proposal.
Okay. Any other note from the board members?
So,
Oh,
and I have to
know-
ask it.
I know you had, did you
Well,
have? I know you. I
to
stepped
me,
on-
I mean, the comments we made, it's a whole different concept, Cabela's versus this. And the whole traffic plan that we were presented back, I guess it was 2015, changed. The DOT sprung it upon us, like a year ago. So I would prefer, starting fresh instead of making comparisons to something that's been quite different in my mind.
Okay. Sandy? You had something else?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be smug or wise guy about this, but would the developer even consider just getting rid of building number 2? Just taking that off the map?
Mr. Goldklang is here tonight, and obviously he's heard your concerns. So, he has to also evaluate, what is compatible with the zoning, and also what makes the site marketable and feasible for his investment to develop it. So I think, we heard the concern, and
Okay.
so, but we also want an opportunity to address the concerns as well, so.
Okay,
you know.
thank you.
Well, with that being said, reduction in the building space to equate the 58 short parking spots. Just throwing that out there as well. You know what I'm saying? One of those buildings possibly get reduced so that you can match your parking spots, because I think we're gonna have a hard sell trying to get a 25% reduction in parking. And it's not because of the applicant's fault. It's because of what the project is going on down there. To me, and I've asked this from the get-go, Steve knows I've asked this from the get-go, there's too much building, too much parking on this small site, now that it's been reduced from 13 acres to 9 acres. Not any fault of the applicant. We understand that, but it's too much there. And now with this park and ride and that crossover that's gonna be just north of you, with the crossover diversion diamond, excuse me, I used the wrong word, the diversion diamond, that's going to impact this intersection, because that's something that we've never dealt with before. And I know, Phil, you're probably gonna, you're looking at me, and you forgot about that diverting. I know you're looking at it, but as Robert said, I don't know if starting off totally fresh, but it's a whole new ballgame with Exit 131 that was thrown at us with the new plan that Yonkers came up with. Yes, Rick, I see you with the mic.
Yeah, I think that having the comparison is helpful. I'm not suggesting that this board commit itself to going down and just picking on those issues that are highlighted in that comparison. But I think it can be helpful to the board to identify seeker issues of significance. That doesn't stop any member of this board from tonight forward thinking fresh and saying, well, given this plan, I want these issues to be studied. And then you hear the comparison and you weigh that together with your own thoughts, and then you will come up with those issues as to that you want studied and how you want them studied by the applicant. I think that's the simplest way to proceed.
Okay, and then, Chris, I'm surprised you didn't pick up on this, because I'm just thinking about it. Turning radiuses, that's something that, with this plan as well, with all this parking in here, with the fire trucks. I don't know if we went over the turning radiuses yet, because we said we had to wait, because there wasn't a final plan yet. There wasn't a, right, Dennis?
Yeah, I think we recommended before
Yeah.
that you have an ESO meeting at some point again,
Yeah.
because now they've changed to do some of the things that the board wants. Turning radiuses would eventually be part of a site plan. They have to comply with that. Now, not every single spot has to have a full turning radius, but they
Right.
have to have access to the buildings in sufficient form that satisfies the ESOs.
And I think part of our remit, going forward is to show you the internal circulation, and that would be part of that. I think
Okay.
another meeting with the ESO at this point would be premature until we have the internal circulation more developed and at a point where, you could appreciate it and your consultants can review it as well.
All right. And I know you don't know what type of businesses are going in there, but I know there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 restaurants, I believe, and the rest is retail. I'm not sure what, where number 7 is, where it says FF. Is that supposed to be fast food also?
No.
What is this? Oh, there is it too.
I think that was gonna be floated depending on.
Floating? What is the, what is,
Depending on the market.
yeah. Where number 8 is, what does that mean?
That's finished floor. That's
Finished
and
floor?
ele-
Finished floor,
This is a
thank you.
grading plan, so those are the finished floor elevations
Thank you.
of the buildings. And that's all, yeah, that's inline retail.
The original, that was a restaurant and that was retail.
Yeah, they flipped the restaurant and the retail around. Yeah. Okay. Chris, anything else? Rich, you're good?
I'm good.
Sandy? So the applicant, you'll get back to us,
We will resubmit.
you'll resubmit,
We have some homework to do, and we will do that and come back before you.
and when you do decide to come back, Phil, in the meantime, if you can reach out to Scott, I'm gonna ask you to
Yes.
do, on behalf of the board members, you're okay for Rick, for Phil to do that? To Scott Geiger, yep.
If we are inviting him, could we also just Only because the Orange County Planning Department sent us the response. Could we invite someone from the Orange County Transportation Council?
We could do that. Phil, you know
Yes.
who's on it?
We'll reach out to them.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah,
And-
the only request I would have is, since it wouldn't be our request or during part of our meeting, but if you do get a positive response from Mr. Geiger, and that he's going to come, if you would give us the opportunity to be here as well,
we
so
would-
that we could hear it.
We would do it all together.
Yep, that would be great, because I don't know that his schedule will line up with our resubmission, you know,
Right,
so.
so that's, something-
Yeah.
if Phil can reach out to him, start setting it up, and when you do come back, we can say, hey, we need you here, and
Right.
we'll do the best we can.
Right, or he may want to come sooner, you know, in
Okay.
which case, you know, more
But
power
we
to
would
him.
definitely, if we have Scott in, we would definitely invite you back to listen
Great.
to it. Not a
Thank you so
problem.
much.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good night. I will see you soon. Item number 2, Kimco/Woodbury Center would review ARB application for proposed revisions to monument sign located at the entrance to Woodbury Center Shopping Center. Said property is located at the intersection of Center Drive and Route 32 and is known in the Village of Woodbury tax maps as Section 225, Block 2, Lot 1.2. Just let me a moment to get my file out. Oh, you're staying for this one, too?
And yeah, no west for the,
Well,
I was
I'm
going to
glad
say weary, but perhaps wicked
well,
might be more appropriate.
Well, I'm glad I put them next to each other for you, by your accident.
Yes, just so
Okay.
everyone's clear, Dominic Cordisco of Drake Loeb on behalf of Kimco, which is the owner of the Woodbury Center. We are proposing to amend the 2 existing pylon signs, and I'm here tonight with Charles Franzini, who has the plans here, as well as Chris Simonello, who are representatives and employees of Kimco. And I know that Chris has an overview that he'd like to give to you, and then I'd be happy to address the board in regards to procedure as to how we got here, so.
Okay, just give me 2 seconds. Phil, thank you. Phil's going to leave because he doesn't need to be here. And just for the record, on Rick, I don't see a GML was submitted for this. Do we need to submit one for this project?
In my opinion, if we are not enlarging the sign at all, the square footage of the sign, then it's simply ARB. And if it's simply ARB, then there's no need for a GML referral because it's not one of the triggering requirements under that statute.
Okay, thank you. Also, with the application,
Calling Sarah.
I don't know what that.
Forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
This is supposed to be off.
4 5 2 4
we're good, take your time.
8 0.
Makes it easier on me.
It's out of control.
Is not available.
With that
It's
being,
out of control.
Mailbox is full and cannot accept any messages at this
just
time.
turn the volume off. There you go, you're good. With the application, for some reason, this application is weird looking, but on the second page of it, it says Woodbury Center LLC is the applicant and the property owner. I don't see an LLC form. That's one of the forms that are missing. It's not gonna stop the project, you need to print that LLC form and get that to the building department for us.
I can do that.
Make sure that, who's the person's name on here that signed it?
That'd be me.
And what's your name again?
Chris Simonello?
Christopher, okay, it's a Christopher, thank you. Christopher with an ER at the end?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, go for it.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for granting us the opportunity to present our proposal to alter the pylon signs at Woodbury Center. I've already been introduced, but it's part of my prepared statements. So my name is Chris Simonello. I'm an Associate Director of Development for Kimco Realty. I'm with Charlie Franzini, our tenant coordinator. And I was going to introduce Dominic, but he's been up here for 2 hours, so he doesn't need to be introduced. Woodbury Center encompasses a 51 acres of land, including 228,000 square feet of leasable area anchored by Kohl's, Michael's, Modell's, Forever 21, and Staples. I'm sure you're all aware of it. The site is located on the east side of Route 17, with Route 6 bordering to the south and the Route 17 87 interchange bordering the north. Kimco has owned the center since January of 2007. Some of the more recent projects at our site include the build-out and lease-up of the old Linens and Things space, which had previously been vacant for 8 years, to Forever 21 Royal Dalton and Lenox. The main center is set back from the road, which was one of the biggest complaints we get from our tenants there, and suffers from poor visibility because it's sunk into a quasi-hole due to recessed grading. So it's tough to see from Route 17 and Route 6. I'll change that. Thanks. Our center has 2 pylon signs located at the main entrance and on the drive aisle near Kohl's. The main pylon sign, which is what I'm pointing to right now, is 35 feet tall. It has 7 tenant panels and this one triangular shaped panel with Woodbury Center on top of it. With the Woodbury Center panel, it's 292 square feet, and without that panel, the tenant sign area is 252 square feet. The secondary panel closer to Kohl's is also 35 feet tall. It has 5 tenants, including the one triangular panel. Overall, it's 220 square feet and 180 square feet without the top panel. To help with our tenants' visibility concerns, we last proposed adding a 3rd pylon sign in 2014 at the corner of Route 17 and 32, which was met with obstacles we just couldn't overcome. When the existing pylons were approved, the retail environment was much different than it is today, with tenants taking larger space, requiring fewer tenant panels on the pylons. In the current environment, with increased competition from online retailers like Amazon and Wayfair, brick-and-mortar retailers are taking less space, leaving us with very difficult spaces to lease. While there are 14 active tenants and 1 vacant unit at Woodbury Center, the main pylon sign only has 7 tenant panels, and the secondary pylon sign, which is barely visible from the road, has only 5 tenant panels. This lack of representation on the pylon signs has made it difficult for our tenants to succeed, with the #1 complaint being poor visibility due to insufficient effective signage, setback, and grading challenges. To that end, we're here tonight because Kimco is in final negotiations with Ulta Beauty to lease the 9,600 square foot vacancy previously occupied by Pier 1 that's been vacant since June of this year. As a condition of Ulta relocating to Woodbury Center from Harriman Commons in Monroe, they are requiring representation on both pylons. The proposed pylons entail redesigning a smaller top panel consisting of Woodbury Center, shifting tenant panels up, and adding a panel for Ulta Beauty, similar to what we're showing here on our design boards. We believe Ulta's condition to add panels is reasonable given the concerns we've discussed related to the center's setbacks and the sight lines, but further detailed as follows. The subject space, which is highlighted in blue, is about 2 football fields set back from the main entrance and 600 feet from the exit ramp on Route 6. The building's sight lines are further restricted from Route 17 due to landscaping and trees, and as discussed, the challenging topography with recessed grading. In addition, by maintaining the same overall dimensions of the pylon sign, we believe our proposed changes to be immaterial to the existing conditions while solving several issues our retailers encumber to attract customers to their stores in this challenging local brick-and-mortar retail landscape. On-premise signs perform a major role in the success of retailers and local economies in their capacity as identification, advertising, and wayfinding devices, especially in commercial zones where the target audience for signage is passing motorists. To address concerns posed about traffic safety, the main entrance pylon, as redesigned, is conspicuous to allow drivers enough time to read the sign and exit the roadway safely. In closing, our proposal seeks to attract Ulta Beauty, which is a nationally recognized credit tenant with over 1,100 locations to the town of Woodbury, and furthermore seeks to sustain their long-term viability and success by enhancing their visibility from Route 17 and 6. With the prior challenges we've had leasing chronic vacancy at the center, and the Linens and Things vacancy comes to mind, we believe we can achieve this goal of of releasing the Pier 1 space in a safe manner if the village approves our plan. Thank you, and we'll address any questions you have.
Okay, Dennis, normal customary goes to you. I just have a quick question. The proposed signs length, it says 12 feet. You're leaving the stone, the brick structure, the posts there, correct? You're not removing those?
Dennis,
Oh,
Chris.
I'm going to get to Dennis.
Sure.
Chris,
No, so
Where the-
just so I can clarify, like the structure itself is not proposed to change at all.
Where
It's
the
not
brick
getting
is
any-
staying-
Correct, the bricks
Okay.
are staying exactly where they are, it's not getting any taller, it's not getting any wider.
Okay,
What
that's-
they've done, in short, if I may, is
That's
really to take a portion of the area at the top, which is considered part of their signage, it counts against their square footage, that says Woodbury Center, and to reduce that so that they can add an additional tenant panel on to the pylon sign, which is along Route 32. They also have a request to add a pylon, the tenant name to the pylon sign, which is in the back by Kohl's, the one that's actually quite difficult to see. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's basically, you can see it a little bit off of Route 6, because it's down lower, but, you can't actually see it very much from the inside of the site. That doesn't, in our opinion, require any board action because there's actually an empty panel there now. So we could, add Alta to that panel because it's already pre-existing. But the real issue and the focus, if I may, is on the Route 32 sign because we are proposed adding an additional tenant sign there. But we intend to do so within the 292 square feet of sign area that is currently being used at that area.
that's okay. I just want to make sure you weren't taking the supports down.
No.
It's the same size.
Nope.
All right, so Dennis, I know you gave us, you didn't give us, yes, you did give us a report.
Yes, I did.
Let's go
I'm
over
going to
your-
talk about this strictly from the aspect of the zoning code, okay?
Okay.
And what you require and what they're proposing. In terms of the first sign, they've qualified now that's called the M2 sign. That's the one that's by
Route 6?
17. Yes, no, this is the one by 32 and 17.
Oh, 32.
Okay, so what they're doing is they're taking the Woodbury Center sign on the top, the triangular piece, and they're inserting the Kohl's sign in there, and they're reducing their Woodbury Center sign.
Yep.
When we calculated this, we thought they were making an extension a little bit. We thought it might have been plus 10 square feet. They can't extend this, but if they're not changing the area of the sign, and they're staying within the sign area, and they're simply changing text, and even though it's a little different than normal in the top, that is really just changing text. I don't see anything in connection with that sign in terms of a referral to the ZBA. I do see on the other sign, the M1 sign, the one that is in the rear, adding a panel to that sign and increasing the area when they're already over the 200 square feet that's allowed, not for one sign, but for the total signs. So they're over that. That would be, if they include that new panel there, they'll need a referral to the ZBA. They could change the top of the sign around, Woodbury Center going to Kohl's, without any further action if they left the other panels and just changed signs there. But if they add a panel, they're increasing the area. That's beyond what is permitted, and that's an increasing an existing or actually a variance. There are two pylon signs. They already exist. That's a variance. They're or nonconformity. I don't recall when it originally went in whether it was a variance, but it's a nonconformity now. It can stay, but they can't increase the area of it. In terms of the M2 sign in front, although I don't think it needs a referral to the ZBA, it does need consideration by the board for a condition that you imposed on a previous approval. And I stated that in terms of your language in here, that the board limited that sign to 7 panels. And you said that that was going to be limited at that time. Obviously, that's something that you did. It's something you could change. That's within your discretion. I don't think that requires referral to the ZBA. I think it's an action by this board. I went through some of the reasoning why I thought the board considered that, because I was here for the discussion, and I won't go through that, but that was basically, it's a balancing act by the board to determine what's appropriate for a reasonable identification of the uses on the site versus the ability of drivers making movements on the road to read the signs, and if they get too busy or too wordy, whether that creates an issue. So you'll have to consider whether one additional panel sign would take you beyond that. Other than that, the applicant, I just said they should confirm their operational details are not changing. I didn't expect they would.
They are not. They are not.
Okay, and ARB is within your, whoops. ARB is within your consideration for the signs and the types, and they've only shown new store panel here. I think if you have a store and it has a color and it has a requirements for a logo, that probably should be presented to the board.
At the time that I submitted the application, we weren't cleared to identify the name of the tenant, but we have been able to show that, and it is on the panels here, and we would, provide those as part of our, amended application that includes the LLC form as well.
Okay, and that's basically all I have, unless you have any questions.
No, I'm good for right now.
If I could,
Go
before,
ahead.
I just want to provide one additional clarification in response to Dennis's comments. He noted that the rear pylon sign, for lack of a better term, the one along Route 6, if we were to add a panel there, would require variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. We were only showing that so that the signs actually would be consistent. But right now, there's already a vacant space on that sign, so the new tenant could actually go within the already existing built sign area. So we would actually remove the request to add an additional a panel for a tenant panel on that Route 6 side sign.
So you're saying that that's M1, that's the interior sign along Route 32, Route 6 ramp. So you're saying that where it says Eileen Fisher, you're going to remove that sign?
Yes, so on the left-hand side of this plan shows the vacant, empty space.
Yep.
So Ulta would go there,
All right,
and this is the proposed, and off of the proposed, Eileen Fisher would disappear.
okay.
Sorry, Eileen.
So the only change in that panel would be for you to understand that they're going to put Kohl's at the top, because you're still going to do that. You're going to put
Right.
Kohl's at the top and reduce the Woodbury Center and put a panel sign in there. So there's no variance, there would be no variance relief that I can see that
Right.
would be required. It's still, then it would be within the discretion of this board to determine all the other items that we noted.
Okay.
If you're saying you're getting rid of Eileen Fisher and just putting Ulta in what's there now, there wouldn't be any changes to the top of that sign, correct?
Yes, it is.
There wouldn't need
The
to be
Kohl's.
any changes, but Kimco
No.
would like them to be consistent, so they may very well do them anyway.
Well,
No,
the board's going to have to
Forever
understand what the
21's
application
Forever
is.
21's
So
out there.
whatever
See
you
where Kohl's
decide,
is?
you'd have to let them know.
Staples, Michaels, and Modell's move up, and where Modell's is Forever 21, and where the blank one will be Ulta. See how it's, because
Oh, so-
all the signs are moving up one.
Okay,
They're
so
all
even on
moving
the
up.
rear one, you're still gonna move Coles up?
Yes. 'Cause
That
they're
is
allowed
the
to.
application,
Yeah.
that's correct.
'Cause they're
We
allowed
would
to
just,
within
we
the-
would just not add an additional panel
Okay,
there.
I just wanted to make sure.
Everyone's moving up a step.
Okay.
That's correct, and the desire would be to have them both consistent, because they care what it looks like.
Now, I'm just going to ask a silly question here with colors. Staples is the red background, Michaels, you're going to stay with the white background with the black lettering. Modell's, you're going to stay with the white lettering with the red background. Forever 21, black lettering, white background. Now you're going to put Ulta in there
Charlie, can you?
with the Ulta black lettering, white background
So,
for the Route 6 ramp one.
for the Route 6, okay.
Yeah, I want to see the Route 6 one.
Yeah,
That's what
so
I'm talking about.
I apologize. These are, the existing tenant panels are all going to stay the same. If we come back, I will present what Forever 21 and Ulta will be with their corporate logos. I just didn't have the opportunity to get their current branding.
All right. Now, the only reason I'm asking is because the one on 32 shows Forever 21 in red. lettering.
Yes, yeah, that's a good pickup. We'll
And then-
correct that.
And then the Eileen Fisher, the background, you're leaving it white and not the current black that's there now?
The Eileen Fisher will be going away, so Eileen Fisher will be black with the white background, yes.
Okay.
We'll correct that when we represent.
Okay, just want okay, Sandy, do you have anything else for Dennis' report?
Oh, for Dennis's report? No, but I did have,
All right, I want to continue
Okay.
with the consultants. Stu, I know we didn't ask for a report from you, but you're here, and I know the two, Dennis and Stu, we were here late nights talking about this application. I was sitting on the other side of the table there. We didn't ask for the sign to be put there along Route 6. The applicant way back when did, right? That was
Yeah.
in like 1998,
Yeah, the last-
99. Yeah.
Last time they came in, there was a different issue, which
Yep.
was more of a planning issue,
Yeah.
and that, you remember you discussed distractions and things like that,
Yep.
but they're not asking for anything new. These are there, and what you're really making a judgment about is just really adding a panel. I don't see the same kind of issue here.
Okay. All right. Rick, thoughts, concerns for us?
Two things. One, I believe that this should be characterized as a type 2. I think it makes sense for this to be an uncoordinated action if there is anything that needs to go to the ZBA, but right now it doesn't even look like anything does. But you'll have to make sure that when you get the resubmittal. But in any event, I think that you should type this as a type 2 action. I want to again underscore what Dennis had said earlier. There is this issue that you have in a prior resolution that says no more than 7 panels, and it was rather emphatic. But as Stu said, that's something that you have to look at fresh now, and as Dennis said, it's completely within your discretion to modify that. That's not like a ZBA condition or a code provision where you must follow it. That was something that was said by that board, and this board has the ability to modify that.
Okay.
On that particular point, if I may, I've just noticed, from being around the area, that there are other large pylon signs that do have more than 7 tenant names. I mean, the one that is most conspicuous perhaps is the Walmart sign, which is
Don't go
very
there.
a
Don't
large
go there.
sign,
That's-
but,
Don't
but,
go We don't talk about that sign, Dominic. We don't
no,
discuss that
I
one.
understand, but there,
I know. Well, maybe you might want to maybe you might want to hear what I'm going to say then. And let's forget about that sign down by Larkin Drive.
yeah. No, well, I mean, it does, I believe, have 10 different panels
Yeah.
on it, so.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, but I mean, I only
Well, I was
pointed
gonna
out,
make a
I mean, perhaps
suggestion.
it's a statement against self-interest, but in any event, I mean, there's certainly, we're
He's not
we're
listening to
competing
me.
in that environment, if you will. And as Chris pointed out, there are some visibility issues as it relates to this site. And if you have a national tenant, and they don't have any kind of visibility along the corridor, then people are not going to know that they're there because they're not going to see them on the building.
Okay? I'm going to make a couple comments here. With the exit 131 project that's going on right now, the road is going to be a lane closer to the sign, because they already took part of your top there. So the road is going to be a little closer to the road. Just so I want to be clear on that, so people are going to see your sign a little bit better, because there's going to be a lane there, and there's going to be cars there, so, but, now, with the sign on Route 32, with the provision that was shown here with the tenant, I know it says no more than 7 tenant signs. It says, if you read it further, or advertise more than 7 tenants or 7 panels. You actually have 7 panels there as it is right now, and you have Woodbury Center as your name. I was going to suggest to the board, I have no problem putting Kohl's on the top underneath Woodbury Center, making that name smaller, and changing what this was originally approved back in 2009. I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem either.
I mean, so what you're proposing for the Route 32, the M2 sign, and what was approved in 2009, I'm willing to change that decision, and you're in agreement with me.
I agree.
Sandy, your thoughts on that?
Well, I have some questions before I would comment on that.
All right. Chris, your thoughts on what I've just said about that sign on Route 32? I want to talk about that right now.
I'm fine with it. I mean, brick and mortar stores need all the space and advertising they get.
Okay.
With the sign that's in front of a Malfi's that's this big, I think that's a bigger distraction when people trying to
Yes.
slow down than letting them add another panel. I don't see the big deal here at all.
Okay. Chris, I'm still talking about the Route 32 sign by adding the Coles up there and overriding what was decided in 2009. Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Now, there was 4 of us. Now, Sandy, to go back to that sign, do you have certain questions of that sign?
Yeah. Okay, so the Route 32 sign, of those stores that will be on that sign, how many of those stores, as Ulta is requiring, how many of those stores in their lease require that they have that space?
On the existing, all of them.
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an application, I don't know where they went or if they're coming back, but we have an application for the Kohl's space that's going to be reducing Kohl's to put in another store. And what if that store also requires national recognition and space? Then what do we do?
It won't happen, because we'll change it.
I know, but
This is it.
that's what I'm asking. You know, we asked the gentleman that presented what possibly might be coming in there, and there really, I don't recall there
At this
being any.
point- At this point, it's on hold. I don't want to talk about Coles right now. I don't want to talk about it because the applicant's not here.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, I don't want to be in a vacuum here. I want some kind of foresight that I don't want you coming, if we approve this, I don't want to see 5 months from now or 6 months from now, the store that goes in there, you know, because again, it's market driven. If they come in and they say, that's the only thing that's holding us back is our name on that sign, then what's going to happen?
I understand that, and that's a fair comment. They haven't been coordinating, they haven't made the request. So, and it's not something that they control. So who controls the sign is Kimco, which is here before you tonight. So there's been no request, and as a result, we're not here looking to add them on at this time. Yeah, right?
All right. Do you have anything else, Robert, before I
I was
jump
going to
in?
ask the same question. That was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else, Sandy, besides that?
No, that's,
In response to Sandy's concern, I mean, certainly it's not relevant to this application, right? If that happens, and that application will be decided by you on its own merits. So if at that point in time they say, we want 8, and we want to either add a panel, or we want to, we're going to keep the same size and shrink these some more, you will then go ahead and make a determination whether or not you think at that time that that's too distracting, because now the letters are getting too small and people are going to be too distracted looking at smaller and smaller letters, or other reasons that you may go ahead and decide that you're not going to approve that. You have that flexibility. You're not binding, what I want to comfort you in is that you're not binding yourself to approve that one simply because you approve this one.
no, I understand that. It's just that this isn't something that we're saying is even a hypothetical. This is something that was before us and
Understood,
said
but it
that they're
doesn't
coming
matter
back.
whether it's a hypothetical or whether it's real.
Okay. Just one other question, along those same lines, is there anything that, in the lease or whatever their demands are, that talks about size, that they have to be represented by a specific size in a sign?
No, just so that they have to have.
Their brand?
Really, their brand and equal representation. So we intend to keep the tenant panels the same size as it currently is on the pylon without increasing the overall sign area or increasing the height.
Okay.
Just to clarify, you said sign panels, not 10 panels.
No, I said sign panels.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, no, not 10 panels.
Okay. With that being said, I see how Michael's is different from the old one to the new one. It drops the letter, the arts and crafts store, it makes Michael's bigger. And also Eileen Fisher, you're dropping off company store. And Forever 21, you don't have the logo off to the side. And same with Hampton Inn, there's some writing underneath there, which I can't read right now.
Can we design it and make sure that?
Are you going to get me presentation of exact what you're gonna put on there? Because I
Yes.
like it with just the names, I don't like, if you want visibility, and you just put the name, people know what the stores are. I don't know if it's a company thing that you have, I'm just saying, I don't know if Michael's has to have the arts and craft store on there, I don't know. I like it without it, but if it's part of their logo, fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear your point that, that a sign should be clean,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, tenants like Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they have their branding. It's the same thing here.
Okay,
So
I'm just asking.
we will get you exactly
Okay.
what the new design is going to look like.
All right, and I'm surprised you're not moving Hampton Inn up further on the board, to be honest with you. Because I know they're always saying that no one knows there's a hotel down there. I'm just surprised that they're all the way at the bottom of the list. I'm just saying, but I see the smiles over there. Any other questions from any board members with this?
No.
No?
No.
All right, then I'm going to offer a motion that we declare this a type 2 action. Do I have a?
Make the motion. Or you're making the motion, I'll second.
All right, any discussion on the type 2? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Type 2, let me just write this on here. So no GML is needed. And by typing it 2, it's an uncoordinated action, right?
All right, it may not, you may not be doing a non-coordination. The only reason that you would coordinate it is if there was a ZBA action, and it looks like you're not going to have a ZBA action.
So type 2 is all I
So
need
it's
to
just,
do.
all you need right now is that it's declaring this a type 2 action.
Okay. All right, anything else that we need to do in review of the short EAF is, Rick, I presume your office is going to take a quick look at that? Well, I'm getting there. No, I'm getting, so when we have the public hearing, you'll have the exact names and the colors, maybe a little bit better picture, so,
We will resubmit in, I think, within the next week or two,
Okay.
and then you can go from there.
all right, Dennis. Oh, this case in point, in 2 weeks, it's a holiday. I know I didn't get a chance to discuss this with the board yet. Is everyone going to be here on the 19th with the holiday?
I'm not going to be here.
Yeah, that's one of the high holy days, right? That's the,
Yes.
all right, because are we going to cancel that meeting? Because I know we talked about.
Go to your October 3rd meeting.
Okay,
We don't have that much in the queue.
all right. What's that?
I would not be here if you need.
Right, that's why,
I think we should, out of respect, just for the
out
holiday.
of respect, all
Sure.
right. So if we have a public hearing on October 3rd, if you can, in the next 2 weeks, have
Can
every.
I interrupt for a second and
Sure.
call for an attorney-client meeting?
Sure,
It's
Every-
related to that issue.
okay. Board members, I'm going to go into a attorney-client meeting at this moment. Everyone, please bear with us for a moment. Gentlemen, just, good thing I brought my little pillow with me. Do we need Dennis and Stu in there? Okay. Those are in the room, the tape is still going.
So it's a harvest fest that lasts Saturday and Sunday?
It's, so originally it was supposed to be a Harvest Fest where they were selling tickets, but they didn't sell that many tickets. So what the benefit of that is now that's been canceled, so you don't need tickets at all. You just come. You just come. So I told her, I think it works like in the city.
He is, yeah. I'm at home on Sunday.
Okay. Saturday, 5 to 7 over at Angry Orchard, you know, and they'll have, they have food trucks there, and of course you can buy cider, and, you know, it's a beautiful spot, you know, actually, for summer.
Yeah.
They did a nice job.
We were down in Baltimore a couple of weeks ago, just vacation there. We noticed on TV on the local, Channel 5, whatever it was, commercial for Angry Orchard.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, you know,
Yeah. They're, you know, it's funny, because originally they didn't think it was going to be that busy.
yeah.
But it turns out it's actually,
Massive.
it's, you know, and if you go there on the Wednesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, you know, which is nice to see, you know, that town has like growing pains, but how it goes to get all.
Yeah, oh, it's nice, it's a nice vibe, it really is. Nice.
Never seen that word right. Recuse. You know, one of those things I could never get off my tongue right.
Okay. Rick?
Yes, with respect to the, what was a regularly scheduled meeting on the 19th. This board had previously, at a prior meeting, indicated that they may have to cancel that meeting because of the Jewish holiday on that evening. There was a discussion today in connection with the Aon litigation, in which there was a discussion with the court's clerk as to a potential decision on a recent application by Aon for a preliminary injunction in TRO. And it was all key to the possibility that the next meeting of the planning board was going to be September 19th. When you started discussing whether or not that was going to happen, I wanted to have an attorney-client meeting to advise this board of that issue, which I had not previously advised this board. It does not appear that this board will have a quorum because of that. We have one member that is recusing herself, and has been recusing herself, I think, since the beginning of her tenure on this board. And I will go ahead and allow the board, rather than talk about what happened in executive session, in attorney-client, I think it's now appropriate to determine whether or not we will have a quorum for that meeting based upon the remaining 4 members as to whether or not one or more are not going to be here for that meeting. You've already heard that Stu is not going to be here for that meeting. I could be here for that meeting. Dennis would be able to be here for that meeting. So, Madam Chair, if you would inquire of your board as to whether or not who is able to be present to determine whether or not you can have a quorum for that evening.
Robert?
I'm not going to be here. I meet plans to do work that night.
Okay. Sandy,
I'll be here, but I'm recused.
you're recused at night. Chris?
I won't be available that evening.
Rich, you said you're,
I was traveling.
so you're not gonna be here either. And I'm not gonna be here. I have made previous plans this afternoon because I knew it was a holiday.
I'll run it alone.
You can't run it alone because you recused yourself. So
All
with
right.
that being said, we will not have a quorum of the
Okay,
board
and I will
members on the
advise
19th.
I'll advise the court and opposing counsel tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, with that being said, when is our first meeting in October? It's-
October 3rd.
October 3rd. So I'm going to offer a motion that we schedule a public hearing for October 3rd for this application and also authorize the attorney to draft a resolution of approval, and we're going to give him some input on that.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Maria,
So,
I'd just like to make it clear to the applicant that if they're going to be on October 3rd, that's subject to the receipt of the materials in a timely manner, and that would be by the 19th. So you have 2 weeks to get the materials in.
you'll be able to get that done?
We will make sure that happens, actually.
Okay. And I was just gonna say something else now.
About the resolution.
The resolution, okay, just take a step back to the resolution. Board members, so from 2009, when it stated that advertise no more than 7 tenants, we are asking Rick to change that to 8 tenants, correct? And only 8 tenants,
And that's only on the one side?
it's only on the one sign, because they're not changing the number of tenants on the Route 6
That's
ramp.
correct. We're not adding a panel
All right.
there. That's correct.
You okay with that,
I'm
Robert?
fine, yeah.
Sandy? Chris? You're
I'm-
still reading?
I saw it before. We're not putting ourselves in a bad spot because it says signs shall never contain more than 7.
Right, and that
And
was,
now we're,
that's something that in 2009, this board said
Okay.
that, so we're
Then-
changing what we said
then I'm fine.
9 years later.
Okay.
It's similar to, like, I will definitely stick to my diet for this week. And then it's like, well, next week.
And, Rich, you're okay with that? Okay. So I think we're all set.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, good
See you on
night.
October 3rd. Thank you. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for the time.
And just make sure you
Really
get that
appreciate
LLC
it.
form in also
Yes, I will.
with the
Yep.
owner
Yep.
name on. Thank you.
Understood.
Whew. All right, so 10-3, public hearing. Next item on the agenda, and I hope I'm Schlesinger, am I saying it right? Discuss and review proposed 3-lot subdivision located off of Sequoia Trail and Scunnamunk Road in Highland Mills. Said property is known in the Village of Woodbury Tax Maps as Section 204, Block 1, Lot 3. Have a good night. Hello. Thank you for being so patient. Oh, before I forget, Dennis, you'll let the building department know that the meeting has been canceled for? Thank you. Jeff, the meeting's canceled on the 19th? All right, good, I'm covered. Okay, go for it.
Hi, good evening. David Higgins from Lankin Tully Engineering and Surveying. I'm here to represent the applicant, Victor Schlesinger, for a proposed 3-lot subdivision of a property approximately 138 acres in size. The property is located on the north side of Scunnamunk Road and on the west side of Sequoia Trail. What we are proposing to do is to essentially subdivide the property into 3 parcels, with Lot 1 being approximately 6 acres in size, fronting on Sequoia Trail. Lot 3 being approximately 16 acres, and that's actually located on the south side of Scunnamunk Road. It's essentially bisected by the road itself from the remaining property, and the remainder of the property being Lot 2, which is 115 plus or minus acres in size. When we first undertook at our office the premise of subdividing the property into these 3 parcels, it seemed a little bit simpler at the time than it did as we started to work on the plan itself. And one of the complications that we have with the plan is that the deed for the property actually encompasses a total of 5 parcels, 2 of which are in the Village of Woodbury, 2 tax parcels that are in the Village of Woodbury, and 3 parcels that are in the Village of South Blooming Grove. So, and I think the reason that is the tax maps show basically divider line between the Village of Woodbury and the Village of South Blooming Grove, and I'm not quite sure if that was a result of when the Village of South Blooming Grove was formed, But I think the intent, at least according to my surveyors, the intent was to basically split the two municipalities with the top of the mountain. Our surveys basically show, as in accordance with the deed, that they go to the top of the mountain, but the tax lot line seems to not quite reach the very top, which is why you'll see on the map that I have here for presentation is the, basically the pink line that's separating sort of the property, representing the property that's in the village of South Blooming Grove from the larger portion of the property, which is in the village of Woodbury. The only proposed improvement that we have with the subdivision is the development of a single dwelling on the 6-acre parcel that's known as Lot 1. And I can show you that on a larger detail map.
Can I just ask a question on that? Sure. So, lot 2, what you're saying is lot 2, 115 acres?
Yes.
The outer boundary is part of that?
The outer boundary is shown on the map here in the orange with the orange highlighter. The deed for the property, and I guess, let me take a step back. If you look at the tax maps for the property, it'll show basically the lot that we were looking to subdivide, which was tax lot 204-1-2 in the village of Woodbury. Basically goes across Scunnamunk Road. So the deed, the tax lot actually goes across Scunnamunk Road. There's also a tax lot in the village of Woodbury that's to the north of that piece, which you'll see on the map. And then there's 3 parcels, separate tax parcels in the village of South Blooming Grove that is on the west side of the pink line on the map. Those are
Right.
properties that are in the village of South Blooming Grove. If the deed for our property described basically where that pink line is and was not inclusive of the area that is represented by the tax lots in the village of South Blooming Grove, we would be able to show basically just the acreage, specify the acreage for our property on that side of the pink line. Because the deed goes all the way and includes the 3 properties that are in the village of South Blooming Grove, and there's no clear indication as to exactly where that municipal boundary is, we basically can only show the deed all the way up to and including the village of South Blooming Grove properties.
But this is what was really confusing to me about this whole thing, because I looked up all of these lots, and they all have specific acreage assigned to them, and the acreage doesn't make, your acreage and that acreage are way far, far apart. And the other thing is that this SY Property Holdings owns other lots all the way around as well. So I guess I'm concerned that, what are we really doing here? Are we piecemeal, are we saying this is a minor subdivision? When really, if you look at the big picture, it's going to turn into a major subdivision?
Fair questions. I do think that it's a minor subdivision. What we have right now is 2 properties, 2 tax parcels in the village of Woodbury, which one of which goes on the opposite side, on the south side of Scunnamunk Road. Normally, that'd be considered, I think, a potentially natural subdivision. It's bisected by an existing road. We're proposing, and I should highlight on the map here, what's highlighted in yellow. So you can see highlighted is Scunnamunk Road. So we're proposing to offer a parcel for dedication to the village so that the village has clear ownership of Scunnamunk Road in that location.
But doesn't,
David, with the application, you have 204-1-2, which I looked up on the county site, and it shows that it's 115 acres. 105 acres already. Does the Lot 3 have a separate SBL? Or, because you're separating it out. Right now, it shows Lot 2 on your map at 115 acres, Lot 3 at 16 acres, and Lot 1 at 6. And if you add those up, it comes up to the 130, what'd we say, 137 acres, whatever it comes up to. Lot 3, does that have a separate SBL?
No.
You're talking about proposed Lot 3?
Yes,
No, that's
Okay.
part of the subject property, and it's all part of the same tax lot.
which is 204-1-2.
Yes.
But what I'm saying in the county, it's saying that that particular SBL only has 105 acres. Where do you get the other 30-some odd acres from?
So again, and if the deed for the property was representative of the tax lots, it would end somewhere around here. Because this is where tax lot 204-1-2 ends.
Right there,
And there's a municipal boundary shown
right.
on the, excuse me, on the tax records that basically runs through this approximate location. There's nothing that defines that with any exact measure. But the deed for the property that's in the county clerk's office basically describes everything that's shown here in orange. Okay? So
Wait,
we've,
I'm
we've,
sorry, I looked down, which,
everything that's in orange is what the deed for tax lot, I shouldn't say tax lot, for the subject property that we're working with encompasses all of that. And it's 138 acres and change. I forget the exact acreage,
all
but
right,
it's
so
written down.
so your proposed Lot 2 is including the 3 lots from South Blooming Grove, it's South Blooming Grove, right? Is it South Blooming Grove or Blooming Grove? What am I-
It's South Blooming
South-
Grove.
So those 3 lots that are in pink, you're taking those acres, and that's how you're adding to 115.
When you add up the acreage of the 4 properties, Lot 1, Lot 2, Lot 3, and the offer of dedication area, it's 138 acres. I can't give you the exact acreage of anything on the other side of this line, because that line is only approximate. We don't know
That's
exactly
not
where the line
according
is.
to the-
If I went, do you have the parcels from South Blooming Grove
This
to
is-
218?
Yeah, but
Do you
this
have
is-
the acres on them? I just
Yeah.
want to do, I didn't subtract, I didn't get
Yeah.
the acre. So 218-1-3, how many acres does that show?
4.8,
4.8?
yeah.
What is one day?
218-1-1-4 is 13 acres.
Okay. And the next one, 218?
1-3 is 4.4 acres.
Wait a minute, which one is that?
No, it went
This is
this way.
5. Oh.
No, that was
This is
4.8.
4.8, and then what was this one?
And this one is 4.4.
All right, so 4, 8, 9, you're talking about 22. 22 and 105, it comes up to 127. So, but also on your application,
And this lot
this,
too.
this lot here, so
That's
that's
13.6.
All right, so what you're telling me where 13, 0, that comes up to 150 acres. All right, so where shows tax lot 204-1-3? That's in Woodbury, that's in the upper portion. That's by the town of Woodbury property? That's in Woodbury, that one? Okay. Now, underneath that, it says existing tax parcel line to be deleted, so you want to combine 204-1-3 with 204-1-2, correct?
It's creating lot 2, where it says lot 2, that's
So-
being created by that 100 plus the property over in South Woodland Road.
Yeah, I think because we can't identify, we show the pink line there as approximate, because it's a municipal boundary between the 2 properties, but the deed it ignores the property line, or the municipal boundary. And I don't know if that goes back to when the village was first formed, but
But if you look at the site
The-
map,
and the boundaries never changed. No? They didn't change any of the boundaries? No. But the deed for the property, and I don't know the date of it, I'd have to pull it up from my survey file, but the deed for the property basically ignores the municipal boundary. It just goes, and that's the shape of it, and it matches the,
That's not unheard of. We
Yeah.
have other properties around, remember IBEW?
Right.
IBEW is municipalities, they got developed that way, it says that. And there are 2 tax parcels.
You're not on the mic.
One development parcel.
Correct.
And without the merger into, or the connection to Woodbury, would those parcels be landlocked? Do they have access?
I think that the two, I can't read the number from where I'm standing. 204-1-3, I believe is landlocked, and that's part of the reason. And it's owned by the same property owner, which is in part why we were proposing to eliminate that lot line, so that it wouldn't be landlocked.
All right, so there's two things here. You're taking two lots, you're combining them into one. Does that have to have a separate application, or that's just absorbed? It's absorbed into one, okay. All right, so that I can understand. So this lot, which is 13.6 acres, will be absorbed into lot number 2. I can understand that.
Does,
So this line from Woodbury, this line here would be eliminated. Then you would still-
but just in Woodbury?
Only in Woodbury.
Yes, I believe that the tax lot numbers will probably stay the same in the village of South Blooming Grove. We're not proposing to change those at all. We just can't identify the exact acreage that's in those properties. And that's why they're labeled the way they
But it's identified in
are.
the Orange County.
Why can't you identify it with the image map?
I think that's going to reflect the approximate acreage of the property.
Well, the Orange County tax information gives you exact acreage.
He's talking from a technical aspect, from a surveyor's perspective.
Okay, but-
About the Blooming Grove line is not that precise. And the county records are good, they're a great starting point, but they're not always perfect.
Right.
They're not like a survey line. And I think that, Dave, you can represent that the outside survey lines here would be correct.
Yes.
The internal division line, you don't really know.
Yeah, the pink, what we show as the pink line, the municipal boundary, we show as an approximate location. And if it would help clarify, and maybe it would, is to show an approximate acreage for those properties that are in the village of South Blooming
Right.
Grove. And maybe we can clarify that the acreage that we're showing for Lot 2, while we specify the total to I think the nearest thousandth of an acre, we could show approximately how much is in the village of Woodbury.
All right, so the Serpy, Octus, where, the heck's going on out there? Okay. I'm just trying to think here for a second. Yes, so we have 5 lots that need to be identified on a chart, on a paper, with approximation of what their acres are, according to the county. Physical, I understand that. So we need a breakdown of all these 5 particular SBLs, the 3 in South Blooming Grove, the 2 in Woodbury, and then we have to show how they're being broken out, so that when Lot 2 finally gets counted out, 1, 2, and 3, you're only gonna count the Woodbury.
We can specify
Specify,
that.
well, only what's in Woodbury, not include what's in Blooming Grove. Right, Dennis?
Yeah.
Am I saying that right? So when you take the 2 lots that are in Woodbury, and you combine them into, they're gonna be combined, and they're gonna be separated into 3 lots. We only wanna know what those 3 lots in Woodbury, what their total acres.
Well, I think it's good to have that, but you should know what the
And the,
entire tract
right, the whole
is,
track is, but
because
I
that's what
want,
you're working on. So
okay.
I think that Dave can provide a table that
All
will,
right.
Clarify it. And when you add it all up, all the tax lots
Right.
and all the.
It'll be approximate.
The bottom line should be the same.
All right.
There's no acreage appearing in this.
All right, you understand what I just said in roundabout way?
I think so, as long as the properties that are internal to each municipality are being represented in terms of an approximate acreage.
Yeah,
You can clarify.
Okay.
that.
Okay.
Anytime you give a number that represents something that divides the parcel with
But how do we know what the
municipal
zoning
boundary,
on this
those
is?
numbers are approximate.
Right, okay.
we can ask them for, can you, also, the 3 lots that are in South Blooming Grove, if you can, let us know what the zoning is for that?
Sure.
That would be helpful for us, because right now, those 3 lots are landlocked,
Sure,
for all intent purposes.
okay.
Maybe, maybe not,
They're all
depending,
in contiguous ownership, and one of them has,
it might be out
frontage
on,
a road, they could probably, get frontage.
Is it-
It's
Rick?
contiguous, but they could also sell a lot,
Yeah.
and then that's land.
does this have anything to do at the top of the point where Gonzaga and Woodbury and all come together, an out point, just take,
Not too far away.
that's what I'm talking, so there was something that occurred, I don't have the full history on it. The top of the mountain there where Gonzaga is, someone accidentally went over into Woodbury from a different village. Yeah, there's something, that needs to be checked out. A boundary line was changed at the county. You know what I'm talking about? There's a lawsuit. Well, yeah. There's something about South Blooming Grove went over into Woodbury's line, and they changed the boundary for the villages. It should have been in Woodbury. You know what I'm talking about. I think this, when you get to the end of it, it might affect it. The what? No, this is
No,
something
that's a
totally
totally
different.
different.
Rick knows what I'm talking about, so this might affect that as well. All right. With that being said, you'll get the numbers back to us, so at least we clarify this.
Yeah, and I apologize for as confusing as it was, but
Yeah.
it was confusing on our end as well, just because of the nature of additional properties and whatnot.
So, for all intent purposes, the house that's on the corner of Sequoia is gonna run from Sequoia to Scunnamunk and inward towards Country Hollow Road. Is that one still wants to be 6 acres or so, plus or minus?
I'm not sure if I followed it's the 6 acres basically at the intersection of Scunnamunk and Sequoia
And-
Trail, and it goes all the way up. Basically, there's other properties.
Right, the next neighbor
at the
there,
end of it,
that's, okay. And, all right, so, and then for all intent purposes, the property that's on the other side of Scunnamunk will be, you'll give me the exact lot, acres on that one, which is 16. Is that really 16 on lot number 3?
Yes, that one
Okay.
is exact to the,
Okay, so lot 1 and 3 are correct with the acreage, but lot 2, you're gonna take care and correct that number and verify it.
okay.
Now, I'm gonna ask a silly question. I know I was just up there today visiting a friend. They're putting a fence up already in there, cutting some trees down. You're aware of that? They're
No,
doing-
I wasn't aware of that, no.
You go in about 6 to 8 feet, they're putting a fence down through the property, and they're cutting trees down. Just so that
I
you're
did
aware
not
of
know
it.
that. Yeah, I did not know that.
Okay, because while I was swimming, I could hear the trees cutting. What the heck's going on? But just take a look at that. With the road that
Is
goes
that,
through
I'm sorry,
Sequoia.
is that by the 6 acres that we're talking
Yeah.
about?
From the corner of Scunnamunk through to Sequoia, they were putting some kind of those green poles and the chicken wire type fence down, I don't know what's going on up there.
I'll ask the owner, but I was not aware of that.
Okay. So now, the Scunnamunk portion, that's gonna be dedicated to the village, since it's,
That's not a village road now?
it's a village road now, but apparently it's owned by this property, because the properties years ago, the property lines went to the center of the road.
Okay.
So that would have to be taken care of, right?
This one doesn't go to the center of the road. You see that sometimes. This one actually goes across the road. So it may have been that this was an old farm, and when they
Okay.
built Scunnamunk Road, it went through, and it just never, there was no action to do it. But that's within the discretion, and I think it's appropriate that they do offer it
Right, so
to
that would,
to the village for their consideration.
all right, so that's gonna be offered, all right. I know, where
Could
did I
ask-
stop?
Could I ask one question?
Sure, go for it.
The 6-acre proposed lot, there's land between Sequoia Lane Trail and the lot. Who owns that land? It's not large enough to be a,
That little strip?
or is Sequoia
That little
just
strip?
a,
I see-
is that
maybe
part of
that's-
the right-of-way?
Maybe that's why he's putting the fence up. That might be HOA property.
Oh, do
Did,
they? Okay.
Did Country Hollow have,
Verizon is
Yeah, I think it's not here. It should be an arrow on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Verizon New York.
they own that little section where the number 637 is?
Well, they own the other they own the other side of the trail, it looks like.
No, it's a small piece. It's a little
Yeah.
triangle. I think it's-
Okay.
That's a utility parcel.
Okay.
Well, this is probably whatever they've got there, this little box.
This is the right of way, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
look on the bigger plan.
All right, before I forget, there's a couple things here. As we go forward to final, all plans in the bottom right-hand corner, keep my signature block so I don't have to go across all the maps.
Got it.
So where your information is above that with the signature corner. The 239M form was missing info. Which form was that? Why don't I have it? Here we go. That's the ownership. It says LLC. David, you have these two sections missing. You don't have the property, you don't have the owners and organization on there, so that you can get to us. There's no name here of the organization. It's not there, and there's the,
Should be the SYW.
yeah, it should be
property.
SYW, should be filled in the members on that. If you can take care of that. I wrote subdivision with South Blooming Grove, we talked about that, road we know about. Site plan for lot 1, why do I have page 2 or 3? Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh. Where it says site distant measurements, if you go up above, why does it have SCHUTT road extension? I guess that's from a prior map?
Yeah, we
That
did
should
we grabbed the detail from another project. The dimensions are all correct, but I forgot to change the
Okay.
road name.
No
Yeah.
problem. And highway work order, Village of Woodbury. At the top, you have Orange County Department of Public Works, you should say Village of Woodbury at the top of that page.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And you have, I put on here sewer versus laterals. Why do I have that on here? That was on,
I think that was part of Dennis's.
yeah, that was part of Dennis's. And then the short EAF, page 2, I have a note here. And then on 8/29, we received from the Orange County Department of Planning. And on August 30th, H2M report. Why do I have? I do my homework, and I forget what I,
Well, is it 10 and 11 on the page 2?
probably.
Here, that's what I have, because it's saying,
Right. It says, will, yeah, that's on the EAF. Will the proposed action connect to existing private water supply? And you have no, it says a new well shall be drilled for each individual proposed lot. That's,
it's plural.
it's
We're only
plural
doing
for
one.
each individual proposed lot. So we're only doing one lot at 6 acres, but I thought they had water up there. Why would they be digging a well? That was my
The
question.
water up there, I think, is a private system. That's the country crossing system in that area. So I'm asking the same question to the
Okay.
applicant. I think that's a private one, but the wastewater system up there is public. It's a,
Okay.
it's a taxing area. We don't have districts anymore, so I think they might have the opportunity to connect in, and they also have the obligation to connect in if there's a sewer available, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
we actually, like, a couple things. I know I had indicated in there that each of the lots would be served by wells. The lots 2 and 3, that's only if ever developed in the future. We're not proposing any development on lots 2 or 3 yet, just lot 1. That's the only well that's proposed.
All right, let me weigh in on that, because there's also a note to that effect saying not for residential use at this time. That's totally unacceptable. The whole purpose of subdivisions is to divide lots for development. And so it would not be appropriate for this board to go ahead and subdivide 3 lots if they didn't know that 3 lots each lot could support a residential development, in this case. And so you need to determine whether or not these lots that are being proposed are buildable lots. So you need to know whether or not they have either a connection to municipal water and sewer, or if they don't have one or the other, that they have sufficient capacity and testing on each of those sites to prove to you that it's a buildable lot.
Okay. These are questions, all right. I'm gonna jump to Dennis, because I know I jumped over you and didn't,
Well, if I could finish the thought.
Also the front page. Go ahead.
We were talking about water and I think also sewer. As Dennis had indicated in his letter, the planning board, I guess, can require, the village code can require connection to community services. We did, on behalf of the applicant, make an appearance before the village board back in January. We actually showed a 2-lot subdivision of the property with potential connection to the sewer system. And we did, discuss with the village board the possibility of connecting into the sewer. I don't believe an ultimate decision was made, but I do know that the board members did express some concern with limited capacity in the system in terms of connection. I don't believe that we went back for a final decision, but the applicant decided to pursue then just a single lot with a well and a septic system as opposed to trying to connect into the sewer system.
Okay. I guess we'll look into that with the village board. All right, Dennis?
Okay.
Do you wanna go over your
Slate, I'll
report?
shoot down it very quickly as I can. Under bulk regulations, I think we should get net lot area calculations, although they're fairly large-sized lots. I don't
Yeah.
expect to have any problem with that, but in accordance with your code, that's required. And they should have a table on there about setbacks, and for the lot that's being developed, they should show all of it. For the other lots, they should just provide the table and say that they'll comply. We noted parking. I don't know if this building has a garage. If it has two-car garage, then that's fine.
I'll check with the owner on that.
Okay. We talked about wells. There's a detail on here, which I think you might have picked off another one. It talks about 120 feet, and I don't think you
Yeah.
want to go down.
No,
Okay.
it'd be
So you're
50.
going to follow normal standard health department requirements, 50-foot casing and 10 feet into rock, okay.
Dennis?
Yep.
You have in here to confirm it's a 5-bedroom dwelling. On the map, it shows a 1,500 square foot footprint.
Yes.
So how many stories does that equate to for a
Well,
five-bedroom
I just
home?
thought the 1,500 square feet was probably small if it's really a 5-bedroom house. So maybe they just put that down as a placeholder at one point, and then when they did the septic design, they got information from the owner. So if it's going to be a little bigger than that, you might want to show it so we can see how it lays out on the plan.
Okay. All right. Before
I mean, there's certainly plenty of space there for a 5-bedroom house, but that's what the septic system has been designed as.
Right.
Let's see. Well, then Rick already talked about the not for residential use at this
Right.
time. We had asked for some details on the wastewater system. We asked for some details on the water system. I'm not going to go into those. Stormwater management, just reasonable stormwater management controls, because a single-family house would not fall under requirements for full MS4 under a 267 code. But adequate management for that. This is a heavily landscaped lot. They should have the clearing limits shown. It's subject to ridge preservation. I don't know if Stu wants to get into any of that, but it is subject to ridge preservation. Any healthy trees over 8-inch or greater in caliber at the breast height should not be removed, and there is a requirement for showing a superimposed photo on a sketch. That would be up to the board's determination, depending on where the view corridors are from. Well, there's certain front yard landscaping requirements. The one shade tree per 40 square feet. Now, if they don't clear anything, and this is a question really for the applicant, for Rick, if they don't clear anything, in the past, I think we have done some. If you don't clear it, you don't have to plant trees
Right.
in front of a forest. But it's in the zoning code, and it's a requirement, so I don't know how we can handle it.
What we've done on at least one occasion that I recall is that if we believe, especially Sue's input, that it's sufficient screening, then we don't require them to put in anything additional. However, we would require an easement, a conservation easement, so that they couldn't cut down those trees in the future.
Okay, well, they have the opportunity to do that here. If that's their intent, they should show that in terms of not clearing that area and providing the conservation easement, as Rick suggests. Okay, they are offering to provide that 50-foot right-of-way. You said you went to the village board for the water or the sewer connection. Did you talk to them about the right-of-way at all when you were there?
I don't believe so. I don't recall.
Well, in any event, the applicant is proposing to do that. I think it's an appropriate thing to do, and let the village board of trustees decide whether they think it's good for the village. They've provided, well, we just made a note, same note. Stone walls, there are stone walls here. Your code requires that they protect those to the extent possible. Just applicants should advise their intent with regard to that. If they're going to protect stone walls, there
Right.
should be a note on the plat to that effect.
Yeah, just make sure that you can reach out to the applicant to see what they were planning on doing with the property.
Yep.
And if they were out, I don't recall, I didn't get out to see if there was any stone walls there along Sequoia. So
Okay.
if you can take a look at that, thank you.
There are a couple other comments. I'm not going to go into in detail. I said I was going to be brief, and I'm never, that.
That's
But,
all right.
in any event, the dirt road connection, there was a dirt road connection that runs into Lot 2. Just curious, is that just to get to the waterway there, or the pond, or do you know what it is?
Well, I spoke with the applicant today just to find out, we went through a couple of these things, but he had said that he thinks some of the hunters have, I guess, an okay from the owner to go in and do some hunting there, and I believe they use that to get back into the interior of the property.
So a word to the wise board members, if you do a site visit.
I
Be
did a
careful on
site
that road.
visit. It's all that land is posted by the Woodbury Field and Stream, of which my husband is a member, so I was back there legally.
Okay.
The road does run all the way to Shadow Lake. But the interesting thing about that road is that I counted at least 5 metal pipes, they look like water pipes, crisscrossing that dirt road. I have pictures of them if you want
Was
to
this
see
an
them.
old camp? There are a lot of camps up there. Do you know if it was an old camp? 'Cause
I don't know, but I did also speak with the president of the Woodbury Field and Stream, who said that they've had no discussions with the owner. Mr. Wegg is who they said the owner was. And I guess he is SYW Holding. But they've had no discussions with him as far as to stop hunting and fishing back there. And they were very surprised that this was even an application before the board. But that was going to be my concern, as far as this lot itself is posted. But is Mr. Schlesinger, because I just read the minutes from the village board meeting, he indicated then that he was only purchasing this 6-acre lot and was only interested in building 2 houses on that lot, and that he wasn't doing anything with the rest of the property.
Correct.
So.
That was the proposal at the time we met with the village board. It was to do 2 3-acre parcels,
Right.
and we now have just one 6-acre parcel.
Okay, but is he going to be owning the Lot 2 and Lot 3?
Not as far as I know. I believe it's just the 6 acres.
So why
He is the applicant, but he's
Oh,
not the
okay.
applicant?
So what you're saying is Mr. Schlesinger, whoa, step back. So the application is totally wrong?
He's the applicant. Mr. Schlesinger's the applicant.
Well,
Mr. Wegg and
Mr. Wegg is
SYW. I think.
SYW.
All right, so that's
Is the
what
owner.
I'm missing. So title of the project, so I'm missing SYW's information. That's what I'm missing.
So, but I need
All
to
right.
understand this. So, Mr. Schlesinger is the applicant for this 3-lot subdivision, but in fact,
He
he is
doesn't own
only
it.
purchasing Lot 1 and developing Lot 1.
Correct.
Is that how it's normally done?
I'm going to defer to Rick now because now
Yeah, I mean, he certainly can. I mean, he has, and many times you have applicants come in here that are contract vendees. It's many times for the entirety of it, but it doesn't have to be. So as long as somebody has the approval of the owner to come in and do an application concerning that owner's property, such as this subdivision, they have the ability to do so, as long as the owner gives the approval. And this is an LLC, so the owner has to fill out the LLC form as well.
But
that's what I'm missing.
how can he tell us what is going to happen with the rest of the lots? Like you said, we need to know what's going on with those lots.
I
If
hear
there's a subdivision, each of those lots has to be able to sustain development.
Right.
Okay, not any particular kind of development, just has to sustain development, so that in the future, it could at least do that development. It doesn't have to be what's actually proposed. Many times on subdivisions, you will, multiple lot subdivisions, you will require them to show where the house is going to go, not because the house is going to go there, but simply because there is a place on that lot for that house to go, that it's a buildable lot.
So Mr. Schlesinger is doing the legwork for SYW
Right, so what
Property
has to
Holdings.
happen, Schlesinger has to come in and prove that each of those lots can sustain development. And that could be a single-family home, but they have to show that it has sufficient septic and water, either municipal or on-site, in order to sustain that. And they would have to prove that before they could divide it. And then it could be divided as he's done. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, well, because in the minutes, that's where the crux, it seems, that the village board left off, that they wanted more information about this 100 and some odd acres before they were willing to talk about the extension of the sewer.
Yeah, I do know, I remember the conversation, one of the board members had asked what was going to become of the remaining portion of the land, and I said, well, we're not proposing to do anything with it. We're looking to do, at the time, it was 2 3-acre parcels on Sequoia Trail. And, said certainly if there was ever anything done with the remaining land, we'd have to come back to the, to the planning board for subdivision approval or site plan approval, whatever it might be. And if there was ever any desire to connect to the sewer at that time, we would have to go to the village board. But there was nothing intended in that regard. We weren't looking to do that. But I do know that the village board member had expressed some concern for if they allowed connection to the sewer line for the 2 parcels that we were seeking the approval to, that maybe that opens the door to connect the remaining property. I certainly didn't think that would, but perhaps I think that might have led to why the applicant decided to just come with the 1 lot with a septic system as opposed to, pursuing further, connection to the sewer line.
Okay.
I'm going to ask another question that you're talking about. With this proposed 6-acre lot, the one section closest to Scunnamunk, there's location of flagged wetlands, and you're putting the proposed sewer lateral in the backyards of other people. Why aren't you not moving it away from them? I'm just asking. Why
Is the septic system situated where it is?
Yeah.
Well, certainly, I think that the soil is going to get, probably more marginal as you get closer to the wetland, so we, intentionally kept it further away from the wetland. I know that the tax lots show that the surrounding properties are all served by community water and
Sewer.
community sewer, so there's no concerns with separation requirements to adjacent wells, so.
That, I'm like, good neighbor, why would you put your septic on the side closest to your neighbors and not on the other side? That's what I'm asking.
It's where we did the tests, yeah.
Okay. All right, so with this application to go forward, Rick, we need to know what the potential use for lots 2 and 3 are going to be, and if they can sustain a home.
You don't need the actual development that.
Is your mic on? Is your microphone on? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it was not.
It's getting late.
You don't need to know the actual development, and it's
Right.
not going to get approved for that actual development.
Correct.
Right? So people can divide their lots and have no concept of what they want to do with it. They can come in for a bare subdivision without any development proposed whatsoever. But
Yes.
when they do that, they need to prove that some development can occur there in accordance with the code. And so they can propose, for example, a commercial development to show that they can do that, or they could do a single-family residence to do that, which is likely what this applicant will do. But they have to show that something can be built on the lot that they're asking you to subdivide.
Okay.
So that in the future, maybe it won't sustain what somebody wants to, but because it's been tested, that it will sustain at least the development that was proposed as being a buildable lot.
Okay.
And
What's
once they're
to stop
done with
the-
this subdivision, if they do demonstrate that and you do approve this and it's 3 lots, then 3 single-family homes can be developed on those 3 parcels without coming back to the board, just by going to the building inspector, as long as they meet all his requirements. But that's all that could be done on those properties if that's what they demonstrate. Now, they can't do any more than that. They couldn't put 6 lots, 6 houses on one without coming back for something to you.
Did you have a question, Chris? Okay. All right. I know Stuart didn't have a report from you because we have a lot of questions.
One thing I think we should talk about, making sure we have, because Dennis alluded to the regulations regarding preservation of trees, and we're not going to, I'm not suggesting that the board ask for a tree survey, but if we have a lot that's going to be proposed to be developed, the single house, we should, I think, ask for the clearance area to be shown and the trees over 8 inches within that area, because that's what you're trying to protect. You remember, you've had experiences in the past where you've asked, you haven't moved, but you've asked applicants to move houses and buildings and driveways in order to protect those trees. So, again, it is heavily wooded. The applicant can make the point that the area along the road isn't going to be cleared, so we don't have to necessarily require the 1 tree per 40 feet. But preservation of trees is important, and we've had some not such great experiences in a couple of cases where the board had approved plans. I'm sorry.
There you go. You're
The
good.
board had approved plans for the protection of trees, and as time went on, they weren't protected the way the board anticipated. So this is small. It's a 3-lot subdivision. There are no specific houses proposed at this point, but as Rick says, they have to be able to prove that each of those lots is a usable lot, and they do have a proposal for a house location on 1 lot. That should be demonstrated. The clearance area should be demonstrated.
Okay. Thank you. Rick, anything else? You're good?
Just seeker, planning board can type this as unlisted and declare its intent to be lead agency.
Okay. Board members, anything
yeah.
else, or we've heard enough for tonight?
Yes.
Chris, Rich? All right.
Maria?
Yes, sir.
If you
Who's
could hold
calling
on
me?
for just a second, we have a little confab here
Okay.
to determine whether or not there would be any other involved agencies. If not, then you can simply assume it. So we need to decide that now. No? Dave, do you see anything?
I think at least a referral to the Village of South Blooming Grove would be good, because my worry would be that the board,
Talking to the mic.
I was saying that I think that at least a referral to the Village of South Blooming Grove would be good, because my fear would be that we satisfy this board, and then we go to file the map in the county clerk's office, and they look for some indication that the Village of South Blooming Grove is okay with the subdivision. Because the property, like I said, the deeds go into the Village of South Blooming Grove.
Do you need to see a copy of that deed, Rick?
I don't think there's any action. I think we're going to notify them.
You need to know
For a hearing.
that? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
so right now,
okay.
I don't think anybody has come up with another involved agency, that is a seeker-involved agency. That is another agency that has approval power over this project. And so, in that case, you can assume lead agency. If it's determined later on that they need some approval, either they need an approval from the Board of Trustees here, I guess with the offer,
Is there any harm in becoming intent to be lead agency, to protect ourselves?
it's not so much protecting, it's,
Well,
but there is no harm. Why don't you do, we just have to figure out who we consider to be involved and interested agencies, and we'll send it out. I guess the Board of Trustees,
The Board of Trustees from the Village of South Blooming Grove and Woodbury?
not South Blooming Grove.
For the municipality here, for Woodbury.
For Woodbury?
For the road.
For the road?
Yes.
Dedication, it would be
I-
them.
They're planning on offering for dedication the roadway.
All right.
that doesn't necessarily prevent you from approving the subdivision. They're offering it.
Right.
Village board can ultimately decide whether they're going to take it or not. You could approve the subdivision with the offer on it.
Right.
Okay.
But we'll go ahead and, why don't you go, I think the safest thing is for you to go ahead and do a notice of intent. We'll send it to the Board of Trustees. This will be required to be, the South Blooming will be required later on when you have a public hearing to special notice under 239 because they're an adjacent municipality. But that doesn't make them an involved agency. So you can type the action as unlisted, declare your intent to be lead agency. I think that's what I started out to be. I must have been a
That's what you said-
genius.
That's what I have wrote down here. All right, so do I have a motion to declare this an unlisted action?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second. All right, Chris, you second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'll offer a motion that we do a notice of intent to be lead agency. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Chris?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and Rick, your office will take care of that. Thank you. David, you have enough from us?
I think so, yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right,
We'll be back with more information.
all right.
Thank you.
And I did make a motion to cancel the September 19th meeting, right?
I don't think so.
Did I not? All
I
right.
don't think so.
I'm going to make official motion that we cancel our September 19th meeting due to a lack of a quorum. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Those who want to stay, have a good night. Unlisted action. What was that?